2022. We just have one study session item up tonight before we start the regular meeting at 6:30. Up first is Economic Development Manager Darren Hollingsworth and Stephanie Mufic, Business Services Manager with AD Works, here to present an overview of the key workforce and employment data from Denver. Good evening, Mr. Hollingsworth.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of City Council. Arapahoe Douglas Works is a wonderful economic partner for the City of Englewood, and we collaborate in a number of ways to support employers and employees in the City of Englewood. Workforce development is a timely topic. Bless you. Is a timely topic for the city, and it is very prominent in our economic development strategic plan, which council will receive and review in October. At this time, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Mufic. She's the manager of business services for Arapahoe Douglas Works. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Is the presentation? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Good evening. I'm Stephanie Mufic. I'm the Business Services Manager at Arapahoe Douglas Works, and I was just going to go through a little presentation to kind of talk about some of the economic impact that's that the workforce is experiencing. So we'll start off with what Arapahoe Douglas Works is, first of all. And the first thing we do is help job seekers. So anybody that needs assistance with career readiness, with career paths, with labor market updates, with short-term training, connecting to jobs, and layoff prevention. We have like a job seeker portion of our agency that works directly with job seekers. They do programming such as WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. So we have the ability to partner with people to provide funding for short-term training up to 18 months. The goal is to prepare them for the workforce. So that's kind of the job seeker portion of our agency. My portion of the agency is businesses. And for there, we actually partner with businesses around the Arapahoe County and Douglas County area, and we provide, the first thing we do is market job openings. So we have access to Connecting Colorado, a free database for businesses to post their jobs. That gets businesses access to anyone that's created a Connecting Colorado account, and anyone who goes on unemployment basically has to create a Connecting Colorado account, so there's a link there. So we always talk about businesses having first access to those that are really out there looking for work. So the Connecting Colorado is a powerful tool. We also have labor market information. Right now, there's a labor shortage that's severe enough to where we're providing a lot of labor market information to businesses to try to make the right decisions for their business for the long term. We also subsidize training programs. So when I talked about the WIOA program, and we have funding around apprenticeship programs and things like that, we can actually partner with businesses and either provide them a paid intern, or we can reimburse them for providing training to somebody who may not have all the skills, and they're willing to train them the rest of the way. So we also strategize solutions. So right now, you're going to see some data in the market that talks about women still being out of the market. So right now, you'll probably hear a lot about childcare as the next benefit in the workforce. Well, part of that is because businesses are having to strategize what their future looks like. So that's what we do as a business services team. We come in and talk about, here's where you are, here's what we're seeing in the market. Now, what would you like to do in the future? Okay, and then we also collaborate. So for instance, when we're working with businesses, this is actually a really good example working with Darren. So we have a business recovery task force, and we pool together the resources from the municipalities, from our chambers of commerce, from our economic development partners in the area to try to provide the support that the business community needs to make sure that they have those jobs open for our community members. So, and the Business Recovery Task Force during the pandemic was critical. We were meeting every week. Since then, we meet once a month, but we still get together, talk about the data, and watch kind of our markets, and then strategize solutions for the future. All right, so let's take a look at the city of Englewood. This would be a little bit interesting for you because, believe it or not, construction is the biggest industry right now in the city of Englewood. This is through August of 2022, followed by healthcare and social assistance, and then followed by the retail trade. If you take a look, just a couple down there, the government, the government jobs in the city of Centennial are far below the national average. That little gray bar is the average, the national average throughout the country. So, but the city of Inglewood actually in construction is more than double the national average right now. So it's a big industry. Construction is booming in the city of Inglewood. So the next data I'm going to show you, we can't get it down to just the Inglewood level, but it's going to be more of the surrounding area with Inglewood. So the next area is unemployment and unfilled jobs. This is going to be a little bit startling, but we have in the month ending June 22, we had 256,000 job openings. So over 250,000 jobs. We had 55,841 people unemployed. So if every job were filled with everybody that's reported as unemployed, we would still have over 200,000 positions open. And this is just the Denver metro area. So very big labor shortage is what this comes down to. Okay, so next we have labor force participation. When we talk with businesses, we hear a lot that, wow, why aren't people working? Well, guess what? In Colorado, they are. So we're actually ranked second nationally as of June for the highest labor force participation rate. So what this means is any person that's over the age of 16 up to that's over the age of 16 that's actually either working or looking for work, that amounts to 60, well actually almost 70% of our population in the state of Colorado. So that ranks us second. For recovery from the pandemic, we're actually ranked third. So again, there's not a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting for work. All right, skill gaps. So at the Workforce Center, what we do is try to make sure that we take the needs of the business industry around our area and talk to job seekers as they come in and let them know where the demand is and try to help them train or get what they need to get on that career path if that's where they'd like to go. So for the month of, through May, these are actually the areas where we have the biggest skill gaps. It'll be where the most demand is in employment, basically. So the top area is in healthcare, and that is huge. So registered nurses, you're going to see in just a minute, is the #1 position that's open in our area. Followed by computer and mathematical, you're going to notice that the second highest job opening is software developers. And then we have management positions, sales related, and we go on from there. So there are some pretty wide gaps there. So, you know, just registered nurses this year, there remains a gap of over 13,000 positions that need to be filled. Again, just in the Denver metro area. And software developers, over 9,000. So the labor shortage is real. All right, let's talk about, you know, the in-demand jobs. Of course, we just talked about registered nurses and software developers. So what do we do at Arapahoe Douglas Works to try to impact this? There are things that we participate in and we drive to try to make sure that we are filling that gap. The first thing is the Greater Metro Denver Healthcare Partnership is a partnership with business, schooling or education, and workforce. And we all get together and talk about what we can do to resource people to train into healthcare industries. So you might have recently seen the Arapahoe Community College Healthcare Academy that happened over the summer with high school students. Excuse me. That was actually, some of those students were funded by Arapahoe Douglas Works through our for our WIOA youth program. We actually will pay them to go through that for career exploration with the goal of trying to get them to understand if they want to go into that field or not, and then provide them the training. All right, then we have a Cna training. So we are partnered with one of the major hospital systems here, and we are working on a cohort of 10 people to go through Cna training because their need is so great. So we will fund that training and then link them to that hospital once they're completed. And again, Excel driving school, truck drivers are very in demand, so we put a lot of people through CDL-A training. And then we also have Catalyte, which what we call Project Dev. That's actually to try to fill that software developer need. There's an assessment that's available out there for people to take, and if they pass that assessment and show aptitude for software developer skills, then they actually will be interviewed and then go into a program that at the end of 6 months, kind of a pre-apprenticeship, they go into an actual registered apprenticeship for a software developer. And then we have CompTIA, which is also another technology training program that we partner with, Spark Mindset, cybersecurity program, and then we do virtual job fairs. So we work with all of these businesses to do virtual job fairs to help them fill their needs. Okay, so now let's talk about job openings and turnover. So everybody heard of the Great Resignation? Well, this chart actually shows you what's happening in the state of Colorado. So in June, there were actually, the blue bars there are actually separations. So looks like over 100,000 people left their job. But the good news is that blue bar is catching up the light blue bar, and that is the number of hires. So there were more hires than there were people that left their jobs in the month of June. So that's actually a positive. And then that gray shaded bar, those are the number of openings. So we're chipping away at it, but we're not there. We're still pretty far off the mark with that labor or with the job openings out there. And then we have next wage growth and inflation. So has anybody here gotten a raise, hopefully, in the last year? So what happens are we actually track wage growth and then also the consumer price index. So right now in the year, so far in 2022, wages have increased on average, looks like 8.8%, so that's actually a pretty good increase. The problem is, look at the consumer price index. It's also gone up 8.4%. So when you kind of level it all out, there's only about a 0.4% increase, and this is expected to go negative by the end of the year, to where wages are still increasing, but because of inflation, it's eating away at that wage increase. So those nominal wages will probably be negative by the end of the year. All right, so now let's just talk real briefly about some of the factors that are influencing the labor force. So we had over 960,000 people retire in 2021. That's up 2.1% from 2020. So a lot of people leaving the labor force to retire, and Social Security has grown 2.2% across the country. We also have declining birth rates, so we're not replacing ourselves at a fast enough pace. So we're down 4% between 2013 and 2022. We also have very few people, again, on the sidelines in Colorado. We have a high labor force participation rate, so that's good news for us, that there's a lot of people working. Bad news for businesses, there's not a lot of people waiting to get out there to go to work. And then we have 1.16 million women that are still out of the labor force because of issues such as daycare and things like that. You will start to see this is the next benefit that businesses offer, is either flexible schedules or daycare opportunities or work share programs, those types of things around child care during the day. All right, and then we have a decline in all types of visa workers. So we used to have that H-1B, H-2B visa program where people would come in from other countries. That is down 33%. Part of it was driven by the pandemic when our borders closed, but part of it is we're still, that couple years that we didn't have anyone coming in, we're paying for that right now in the labor market. And then we have many workers that are leaving. So we actually have over a 30% increase in business startups. So people are leaving to go start their own businesses, which is a positive. The problem is that it's causing an issue for those businesses that want to hire them. So that's kind of a quick update on the labor market. And of course, I always want to help spread the word about Arapahoe Douglas Works. But I will stop here and ask if you have any questions.
Ms. Mufic, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. Very detailed and a lot of information I was unaware about. So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll let you get us started.
I'm curious about the largest industry slide. The third largest industry is listed as administrative and support and waste management and remediation services.
Yes.
Why do you lump secretaries and garbage men together?
Actually, it's called an ONET code, so it's occupational network codes, and that's what kind of lumps them together. It's a coding system that does that.
Okay,
But
it seems
good
like a strange combo to me.
I agree. Oh, I was just gonna try to get back there for you. All right.
I think we lost the chart over here, but, Member Russell.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I have a question because I've been hearing a lot that businesses are going to start laying off people. And how is that going to impact this current scenario?
Yeah, and actually that is a fact of a labor market that's so tight. It actually will add to deflation because there's not enough productivity out there to continue growing at the rate that we were. So that is predicted in the near future that we will start to see more layoffs. And what will happen is it's kind of like the tipping point. For a little while, it'll be okay because the businesses that are out there that need people are going to come in and grab all those people that are being laid off. But there is a time when that tipping point happens where there's more people that are being laid off than the jobs available. And that's where we come in and start trying to help people with that training. And they really do have to switch careers at that point because they may not be able to go into the work that they used to do. So we will partner with them and try to upskill them for those careers that are still somewhat in demand.
Okay, thank you very much.
Member Noonekamp.
Thank you for the presentation, incredibly helpful and informative for us. On your slide about unemployment and unfilled jobs, you noted quite staggeringly that even if we were to fill every position, there would be over 200,000 remaining openings. And you also shared with us later in your presentation some of the reasons that we're seeing this gap. Have we been in a position like this before, kind of in recent memory? How did we address it then? Can you give us some historical context? Is this an outlier or is this normal ebb and flow?
Yeah, and actually it's been predicted for a while. So in 2019, before the pandemic happened, it's kind of hard to remember, we actually had under 3% unemployment. So we actually had one county at 2.1%. So the labor shortage was happening already before the pandemic. Then things kind of fell apart. And what happened where there was a 2-month period of time where there were a lot of layoffs. And when somebody gets laid off, that's a personal issue. So that really, you internalize that. And when you have time to go home and think about it, you may not come back to the same career that you left or that you were laid off from. That's why you see some of those customer-facing positions where it's pretty hard to fill. People got time to go home, spend time with their families, think about their future, and they've kind of thought about it again and went into a different line of work. But the labor market shortage was planned to happen over at least a 10-year period. And that's kind of what we're getting back to, somewhat of a normal after the pandemic. And we're right back to that labor shortage where we were. So, good question.
Member Woodward.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I have one question.
Sure.
And I just want to verify that what I believe I understood was that you're matching people, unemployed people, with specific jobs that you know that are available or have received the listings from.
Yes.
That's great. Very good. Thank you.
Ms. Mufic, I have one question. On your slide for actions of in-demand jobs, actions to support, some of these I'm familiar with in terms of just the need around nursing and that type of thing, but the Excel driving school, that one I heard a lot over the past couple of years just around CDL and just the companies not able to do trucking. So I guess my question for you, for Arapahoe Douglas, how quickly are you able to mobilize when there is a need within the business community? Is this months? Is this weeks?
Yeah, it
years?
depends. So what we do is we try to take that need and understand how many customers we're working on and try to come up with, it's almost a marketing campaign. Like, we know that there are trucking schools out there that need people to go through the training. Well, we also want to make sure that the person wants to go through the training. So we don't tell them they need to go to truck driving school. What we do is talk about the opportunity. So we may create a flyer, we may create an email, we may just talk to our workforce specialists and say, if this person wants to do this, then let's get them through this track. But one example that's happening right now to your question is with, in the healthcare industry. So we had a hospital that came to us and said, we have a dire need for CNAs. So we said, okay, there's a couple things we can do. We had that Arapahoe Community College Healthcare Academy. We can look and try to get students from there to put through CNA training, and in the same time frame, maybe go to work in the hospital in an entry-level role while they're going to school, and then go right into the hospital. So that's what we're doing right now for that hospital. We had another example of an aerospace subcontractor that needed people for cabling. We took him to an electronics class at one of our technical schools, and he was able to find 10 people from that class to set up as interns. And from there, he's hired 2 permanently so far, and the interns are continuing to work today. So we do try to put together cohorts for businesses that are in great need.
Ms. Mufic, thank you very much for that. Member Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for being here tonight and sharing this intel with us.
Uh-huh,
I work in software development.
all right.
I have for many years. And I don't mean to challenge you, but I'm really curious about, I mean, with a skill set like that, I mean, how likely are you really placing people? I mean, what's the likelihood of you really finding, okay, so it's a big demand area, obviously.
It is.
But are you really finding people that can skill up and get connected to positions in that field?
So that is a
I mean-
challenge, because what we've done is when we first started partnering with Catalyte, for instance, they have a software developer apprenticeship. They have an assessment that, basically if 1,000 people take it, there's only gonna be about 50 or 60 that actually pass and show that aptitude.
Right.
So that is a challenge. However, for us, we've gotten pretty lucky so far, and we've been able to we actually started with 10, 2 people dropped out, but now we put 8 people through that program, and they are employed either with Catalyte or with another employer at this
So
point.
for a fixed amount of time, you did have
Yes.
8 to 10, or 10, 8 that went through and
Yes.
completed, so they passed the assessment and went through the program,
Yes.
and then were able to be placed in paying positions in software development.
Exactly. What happens are there's 6 months, there's like a pre-apprenticeship time that is unpaid, but there's no cost for that training. So as far as Arapahoe Douglas works, we actually partner with Catalyte to do an
Catalyte.
internship to try to keep people
Sure.
stable. And then from there, they go into the actual apprenticeship. And they're an employee of Catalyte or another company that's partnering with Catalyte during that time.
And to what degree do you feel, or have you discussed that, and thank you for answering that, it's great to
Uh-huh.
hear, that other partnerships might support, help you support more the demand, or equal out that economic equation?
Yeah. So that's where the good thing about Catalyte is, the assessment is blind. It basically, we give the assessment to anyone who's interested in software development, and if they pass, then they go through an interview process and go into the program. And the interview process is just to make sure that they're okay for the next 6 months, because it's a full-time program that they go into. And then from there, go to work in software development into that apprenticeship where they actually work on projects.
Thank you. So what I meant is there any benefit to you if there were other programs supplementing?
absolutely,
Working
yes.
in tandem with the group that you're currently, you know what I mean? To
Absolutely.
both maybe assess and or just doing the training.
Yes.
I mean, because
Yes.
I say that only because in my places of employment, we've been very open to having individuals in these, training programs. Or in
Perfect.
G School, actually they're working and getting some pretty sizable
Good.
salary. And they're literally just pair programming and learning on the job. And it's just the industry that obviously has an appetite for that. But other groups might supplement what you're doing. I mean, I'm really happy to hear what you're doing, but I know that
Yeah.
I'm happy to.
Well, thank you. I
Talk
would like
offline
to
if
talk
you-
to you.
yeah.
Yes, because there's 3 companies on here that we're partnering
Yeah.
with. Catalyte is just software development. CompTIA is also, the help desk training, cybersecurity, those types of tracks. And then there's Spark Mindset, which is cybersecurity as well.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk to you about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
make it happen. Yeah, thank you.
City Manager Lewis, I saw your light on.
Yes, if it's all right if I ask a question. Thanks for being here, Stephanie. It's good to see you in living color again. Just one question on the industries, the largest industries in Inglewood. You know, construction is really well above the national average, currently our biggest industry. But I also noticed that on the skills gap graph that industry actually is the only industry with a surplus. Are we still having the same skill gap in terms of trades, plumbers, electricians, carpenters? So is this more focused on just laborers in the
Yeah,
field?
so that's an interesting, so the construction is an interesting industry because we can see the need out there, the job postings, but there are not a lot of people that actually have resumes or actually go through those job postings to get work. So that's where the gap shows on the other end because the alignment between the job openings and the way that people apply is off. And that's what shows up in the data there. It's not a normal industry where you have a person that's gonna apply for a job, use a resume, go through LinkedIn, go through Indeed, those types of things. That one industry is outside of that normal process.
Gotcha, thank you. That's really interesting. Since that is one of our larger fields, is there, does the organization have a plan for maybe how to address some of those challenges that may actually affect Inglewood?
Yes, we actually have a construction sector partnership. So we work with like the Home Builders Association and we try to work with those businesses and look at where they're getting their labor from and try to help support that pipeline rather than trying to build out a new one. So we also have, of course, our regular connections with, there are schools that have construction programs that we make sure that those businesses are connected to. But yeah, it's an unusual industry to say the least. So, all right.
Any other questions from council? Ms. Mufic, thank you very much for your presentation tonight and your continued partnership with Inglewood. Great information tonight, and just love the fact that you are utilizing your
All right. Well,
your
thank you.
Rolodex in order to expand that partnership today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Council, we are just a couple minutes before 6:30. There was only one agenda item today. We had one moved from the agenda, so I was asked if it was okay to start the meeting at 6:30, or actually I asked if we could start the meeting at 6:30 tonight. So we will be starting the regular meeting here in a couple minutes, but I hope everyone's okay with that decision that I made. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And if you're able to, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And City Clerk, if you could just take roll call.
Yes. Member Anderson,
Present.
Member Noonencamp,
Present?
Member Russell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Present.
Member Wink,
Present.
Member Woodward,
Present.
Mayor Sierra,
Present.
all present.
Thank you. Consideration of minutes from the previous session. Any changes to the minutes from the regular city council meeting of August 15th, 2022? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonencamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6. 2 proclamations tonight, starting first with Workforce Development Month proclamation. And members of AD Works, I do have a proclamation that I have signed for you. So after I read it, if you wanted to take a picture, I'll be okay with that, or just a handshake. So, going on to 6A. So proclamation of September 22 as Workforce Development Month in Inglewood, Colorado. Whereas we at the City of Inglewood recognize that a skilled, well-trained labor force is vital to the continued growth and prosperity of Inglewood businesses. Whereas Inglewood's strategic plan and economic development initiatives strive to support the growth and retention of primary employers in the community by cultivating the development of a talented, available, and inclusionary workforce that supports these employers. Whereas the City of Inglewood has invested in programs to improve and increase workforce development and training programs in the city, such as investments in the Bridge House, Ready to Work program, and in Cross Purpose. Whereas Inglewood has forged strong and productive partnerships to support this endeavor, including with Arapahoe Douglas Works, which hosts a variety of special events designed to help local businesses and workers succeed. Now therefore, I, Othaniel Sierra, Mayor of Inglewood, Colorado, do proclaim September 2022 Workforce Development Month in Inglewood, Colorado, and to celebrate the competitiveness and prosperity of Inglewood business community and the public-private partnerships that build and sustain training opportunities for workers to acquire skills needed for the 21st century, given under my hand the 6th day of September 2022. And Ms. Mufic, if you'd like to come up, if both of you would like to come up for this proclamation. Thank you. And now we're moving on to 6B. Let me see if I have one here. The next proclamation is for National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. And I'll read the proclamation. Whereas National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month celebrates the Hispanic and Latino community and highlights its countless achievements in business, industry, government, education, the sciences, arts, and faith. And whereas the observation began in 1968 as Hispanics Heritage Week under President Lyndon B. Johnson and was enacted into federal law on August 17, 1988, calling upon all the people of the United States to observe this time with ceremonies, activities, and programs. And whereas September 15th through October 15th is recognized as National Hispanic Heritage Month, which is a time to honor the ways Hispanics and Latinos contribute to our common goals, celebrate their diverse cultures, and to work towards a stronger, more inclusive, and more prosperous society for all. And whereas Hispanics have enhanced and shaped our national character with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their communities, while adding their own distinct and dynamic perspectives to the story of our country. And whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans represent a significant demographic of the city of Inglewood, we honor the invaluable ways they contribute to our great city. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Othaniel Sierra, Mayor of the City of Inglewood, Colorado, and the City Council hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month in Inglewood, and encourage all residents to consider the contributions of Hispanic and Latino people to the present, past, present, and future of Inglewood. Thank you very much, everyone. Sounds great, thank you. And now moving on to agenda item 7, recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Written materials for presentation to council may be submitted to the city clerk. And up first is Jacob Gilbert, an Englewood resident, here to address council regarding the Chenango lot at Bellevue Park.
He's not here tonight.
Okay. So, okay,
Yep,
Mr.
sorry.
Gilbert, sorry, I see what you meant. We'll move on to Ms. Kathleen Bailey, an Englewood resident, here to address council. So I get 10 minutes now. Good evening, Ms. Bailey. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Kathleen Bailey, Jason, and Union. Just as a protocol, I had asked if you guys have comments or challenges, anything I say tonight, can it be done while I'm standing here rather than when I sit down? I would appreciate that. Thank you. Inglewood City Council's #1 responsibility is the life, health, and property and general well-being of the Inglewood citizens. But does council honor that? not by wealth building of staff and employees through multiple pay increases and tonight's proposed instant vested status for new and existing employees. If approved, those already well-paid employees won't even have to bother to give the Inglewood citizens 5 years of their time before earning that vested status, but could leave at any time before 5 years with 100% ownership of that vested funds. And not by a council member falsely justifying and promoting, actually ignoring our own fire marshal safety regulations in order to provide a severe weather shelter for homeless within Inglewood City, the city of Inglewood, when in fact, per that previous information provided by Member Anderson himself back in 2019, the homeless are already provided that protection, if and only if they pass the vetting interview. Back in 2019, the vetting took place in Anderson's group's previous location on Broadway in Inglewood. Those homeless that didn't pass the vetting interview to be safely housed in severe weather shelter in Littleton or other neighboring cities were simply left outside on Broadway in Inglewood, near Inglewood businesses and city neighborhoods. And even after 3 years, his own church community didn't think it worth to budget for installation of a sprinkler system. I am outraged. He and a number of you had absolutely no qualms about being willing to ignore our own fire marshal's safety regs. Apparently $8 million to protect Inglewood citizens from drowning in their homes is too much money. But tonight's proposed contract for one of Anderson's group's bridge house, an $8 million plus project cost, to be built in Inglewood for the political accolades of housing and training the homeless in the city of Inglewood is not at all for the benefit of the Inglewood citizens. Currently, only Aurora and Boulder can afford to do this. Why exactly does Littleton or Sheridan not want to do this in their cities? Why exactly should Inglewood citizens take this on? Alternative policing programs provide political accolades from senators and representatives, while investing in keeping our own police force staffed with sufficient patrol officers does not. But you don't serve the Inglewood citizens by prioritizing alternative policing over the existing critical staffing needs of our own EPD. At a time when defund the police movement demoralized good officers everywhere, it has also made recruiting for police officers difficult for PDs, including our own EPD. Your CM was fully aware of that recruitment struggle, yet he publicly declared that he believes alternative policing is the future. And despite the fact that crimes involving guns and gunfire are on the increase, our bobblehead compliant city council agreed with your CM, and you also prioritized alternative policing over prioritizing staffing our own EPD with the needed 9 staff members, including 6 needed patrol officers who actually protect and serve all of the Inglewood citizens. And while you were all promoting alternative policing for all of us, all of you were simultaneously contracting with a private security firm at Inglewood taxpayers' expense at $500,000 annually to provide yourselves with armed guards to protect all of you at the Civic Center. After this city for decades ignored major studies identifying significant flood risk for the South Inglewood Basin, you don't serve the citizens by, after one study session and just 2 questions, dropping your 2019 commitment to actually invest $8 million to upsize the 25-year rain event main trunk line pipes and the significant topographical sag of the upstream half of the South Inglewood Basin, where the traumatic, deadly devastation occurred in the 7/24/18 25-year rain event flash flood. And instead, you bought into CM Lewis's and Director DeAndrea's plan to save money and only invest $2.5 million to just improve the hydraulics within portions of the existing inadequate, undersized 50-year-old 2-year rain event capacity main trunk line pipe. Not a single piece of 25-year rain event capacity infrastructure has gone anywhere in the upstream half of the South Inglewood Basin, and yet you ignorant and morally have falsely assured those still traumatized residents that they are now safe in the event of the next 25-year rain event. But this is the same city that, to save money on disposal costs, allowed stockpiling of high-concentration radionuclide byproduct sludge on site and uncovered at the Alvarado treatment plant beginning in 2011. 3 Alvarado treatment plant workers developed kidney and lung cancer during that stockpiling period. 2 died in 2013. The third died in 2016 after a longer struggle with lung cancer. Concern for plant workers fell on deaf ears. The cancer also developed during that period in 3 adjacent homes, and only after a citizen reported the stockpiled sludge to the CDPHE, who issued a compliance advisory in 2016, was the last sludge removed in 2018.
Ms. Bailey, thank you very much for your time tonight. Questions from council for Ms. Bailey? Seeing none, Ms. Bailey, thank you very much for your
I hope you
presentation.
won't wait till I sit down and then I can't answer you for 2 weeks, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. That now concludes scheduled public comments. We now move on to unscheduled public comment. Same format applies, except you're limited to 3 minutes. And we do have 3 speakers up tonight. So first up would be Cna Dickerson, no topic given. I saw Miss Dickerson. She's just outside the door. She's right outside, right? I thought I saw her. I'll give Ms. Dickerson a minute to prepare. And by the way, tonight, Member Wink will be giving a response to public comment.
Sorry, I didn't know anybody had picked it up.
Sorry, Ms. Dickerson. No, take your time. Yeah, you have 3 minutes when you're ready. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
I'm
Give it
sorry?
again. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets, and then you can begin when you're ready.
Cna Dickerson, District 1.
No, and your cross streets, Ms. Dickerson. It's either your direct address or your cross streets.
Bates Logan.
Thank you.
Numerous states and even localities have introduced or passed legislation to limit 4G and 5G rollout locations, especially in residential zones and schools and hospitals and even apartment complexes. The baseline established by the unelected bureaucracy known as the FCC is to fast-track co-location on existing public right-of-way infrastructure and/or fiber optics, establish non-discriminatory and reasonable fees for accessing public right-of-way infrastructure. Local control legislation in numerous cities, even in California, restricts, as does Inglewood zoning regulations, any telecommunication structure and antennas in residential zones, and most restrict any antennas near or on schools and hospitals also. Please note the following. 1, existing infrastructure in public right-of-ways are to be made available and fast-tracked. 2, easements are not public right-of-way, nor can their specific purpose be added to or increased. The right-of-way ends at the sidewalk edge adjacent to private property. 3, fiber optics is the preferred medium for existing wireless backhaul networks and increasingly necessary for 4G and 5G front haul and the entire process. 4, fiber optics has been installed in and under the streets of Inglewood, especially in residential neighborhoods, and there is no necessity to impact any residential property owner by building new or replacement light poles in the easement. The easement is not a right-of-way. Public parks and green belts are rights-of-way and/or public property, and their light poles can and should be used. I question the wisdom, right, and legality of staff, with or without council approval, to make an agreement with AT&T or any for-profit corporation, especially when it violates private property rights, zoning codes, especially when coverage is quite adequate as it is now, and fiber optics is available, which was intended to mitigate or prevent multiplication of more poles and antennas.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Any questions from council? Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Dickerson, would you please tell council where you worked and for how long you worked there?
Oh, starting in the early 90s, I worked for telecommunications companies. I've hit almost every single one of them. I worked for AT&T, I've worked for T-Mobile, I've worked for T-Mobile when it was Western Wireless, US Wireless, in 5 states.
Thank you. And so you have an understanding of all the laws regarding these
Yes, we had
locations.
to.
Okay.
And right now, there isn't a federal law, there are just FCC regulations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, Ms. Dickerson, thank you very much for your time tonight. Up next is Mr. Steve Kelly here to speak about off-leash and 5G. Good evening, Mr. Kelly. If you could just state your name and your address across streets. We'll give it a second.
Okay, Steve Kelly, Radcliffe, Delaware. I'm here to urge you to not make changes to Jason Park's off-leash program now. It makes no sense when you consider the following facts. One is the cost. The cost of a permanent fence is $10,000, which is 50 times the cost to replace the plastic poles in a repair. That's a 4,900% increase in price for that choice. I think, I could be wrong, but I think the city is going to ask for a sales tax increase on the November ballot. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't make sense. The mayor at the last meeting mentioned something about maybe voting to have the fence removed next year or any year. And if that's the case, why spend $10,000 right now? Also, there's some hypocrisy. In June, Citizen Bonnie handed in a petition with 103 signatures asking that the city let the park patrons, including seniors, walk off-leash dogs in the morning at Centennial Park. Council's answered no. The reason? Council wants to let time go by before we evaluate at Centennial Park. Meanwhile, at Jason Park, let's, after 3 weeks of temporary fence, spend $10,000 for a fence that might be taken down in the future. It's changing storylines too. The Parks Department's initial presentation cited vandalism as the reason. Gasp. That's a problem. It needs a solution. And a knee-jerk reaction. Now in the final draft, kinder and gentler, let's call it damage. Vandalism evidently hasn't been proved. Those two words represent two very different meanings, which require two very different actions. Sounds now like there's a solution looking for a problem. It's misleading to the public and council to cry vandalism and then let the reason change to something other than a crime. Why is it not good? It's really not needed. These signs are working pretty good. I have been there a few nights and I haven't seen issues with dogs. It's going to ugly up this beautiful park. It will not build community. I am happy that the words were changed so that the meaning of the ordinance matched the intent that Parks Director mentioned. So 5G, I would like council to present to the public a map of all the 5G towers that are scheduled to go in. I would like to make sure personally that commercial and industrial properties are being maximized. Based on the fact that there's been some movement of at least one tower, they can't be all set in stone. And from what I don't know too much, but it sounds like there's got to be a lot of towers. So let us all see it rather than doing a pick it apart, one battle at a time, one citizen at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for your time tonight. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Kelly. Up next is Wallace Lukowski, here to speak on Jason Park. Good evening, Mr. Lukowski. If you could just state your name and your address or cross street.
My name is Wallace Lukowski. Thank you for pronouncing it correctly. It's a tough Polish name. I live on Jason Street, 5 houses down from, excuse me, Jason Park. I think everybody knows me because I walk around. Excuse me again. I walk around the area a lot. I'm the neighborhood block captain for just about everybody in 3 blocks area, so everybody kind of knows me. But when I go to the park, I'm tired of being yelled at for what you people are doing. Everyone is calling you dumb. Flat out dumb. What are they doing? They can't post signs. We know what they say and what they mean. We put up a fence, we tear the fence down. The fence got vandalized by one person, and you want to punish 1,000 dog owners. 1,000 dog owners, folks. Is that fair? Is that what you want to do to the citizens of Inglewood? Is punish 1,000 dog owners for one person vandalizing a fence? A fence you didn't put up at the right time and take down at the right time besides that. You confused everybody. And again, everybody's dumb. I went one day and told a man that he had a dog inside the playground. He told me that was tough. He had 2 kids. I said, still, it's a $300 fine to you. He looked at me and he said, no, I'm not leaving this park. And my dog's staying in the dog park. Again, I just said, fine, sir. And he goes, who told you this? And I said, the city council did. The city of Inglewood did. And again, that word dumb came at me again. I'm dumb because of you. I tell people to pick up their garbage, and I spend an hour every day picking up garbage in Jason Park. It's a beautiful park. It is the best park because I keep it clean. I keep the dogs clean. We're out of bags right now, everywhere. Everyone's screaming, like, what happened to the bags? Are they really closing Jason Park? We don't know. Dumb, huh?
Anything else, Mr. Lukowski?
No.
Any
Do you have
questions
any
for-
answers?
Any questions for Mr. Lukowski? Seeing none, Mr. Lukowski, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And that now concludes unscheduled public comments. Member Wink will be providing feedback. When you're ready, Member Wink, you may begin.
Thank you, Mayor Sierra. Ms. Bailey, thank you for your feedback on vesting. We certainly appreciate your input, as always. I think there might be a bit of misunderstanding about the vesting proposal on tonight's agenda. If that's correct, I'll say that the proposal is not for instant vesting, as some cities have recently executed. Ours, on the other hand, is to change all employees to 1-year vesting. And in fact, this proposal removes the current policy providing instant vesting for executive positions and then makes them have 1-year vesting, as has been proposed for other employees. Regarding the emergency sheltering in houses of worship, our city council remains committed to safety in these structures, as well as in other commercial occupancies throughout our city. I believe wholeheartedly that each and every member of this council is committed to this objective. We as council are charged with balancing the needs for safety with the needs of individuals who could potentially freeze to death. It's not an easy decision, and what we have done to this end is instructed our city manager and city attorney to incorporate the recommendations of the fire marshal and of our building official team in all proposals, and to provide us with alternate measures to ensure that everyone in houses of faith remains safe. There's a presentation from these groups that we will hear in the coming weeks. I hope you are able to at least listen in. I'm sure you will. Thank you. Ms. Dickerson, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing your feedback as always. Specifically on telecommunications equipment this evening. It's a difficult issue, and I think the best I can offer now is to invite you to attend one of our planned study sessions during which council will discuss options for code amendments before the end of October. So we are at the beginning of September. So prior to the end of October, at a date to be determined, we'll be making this or having discussions about amendments to our code. Finally, to Mr. Stephen Kelly and Wallace Lukowski, thank you as well for, of course, coming and sharing your opinion and your feedback and your suggestions and recommendations. We do have a planned report due into council at the 1-year mark of the ordinance to amend off-leash policies at Jason Park, which you specifically spoke to this evening. That'll occur in December, and based on our commitment to this phase, the council will review that report at that time and will then decide upon the next best decisions taking into consideration all of this data that you've thoughtfully provided us in the previous months and ongoing, regarding decisions for dogs, dog owners, dog lovers, non-dog owners, non-dog lovers. Every group, right, has a valid point and valid opinion. So we'll take that feedback that you've shared with us during this phase, in addition to what's provided us in this report in December, and we'll make some decisions. So thank you so much, really. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Member Wink. Council, we're now at agenda item 9. I'm not sure if anybody wants to take a short break now or, I'm sorry, Member Noonan-Camp, do you have anything to add to tonight's?
I do, if we have a
Okay,
minute.
yeah, sorry, I forgot to
No,
ask.
it's
Member
okay.
Noonan-Camp, go ahead.
I'd like to put in a council request about if we have dog bags, the bags in the parks. If we heard from a citizen today that they were not refilled, so I want to make sure that they have that. And I know that there were a couple questions tonight about us being able to answer questions in the moment or respond to citizens in the moment. And I do just want to provide some clarification for citizens who may be watching that the City Council does have policies that state when citizens come up and address us, we can ask clarifying questions in the moment, but it's not a time for dialogue or to enter into a conversation in the moment, to respond to what you're saying, to keep the meetings moving swiftly and effectively. And then obviously we do have one member who will address everyone all together at the end and answer questions. If you'd like to dialogue with any of us, you can feel free to reach out to us outside of this meeting, but wanted to offer that clarification in case folks didn't know that.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Anyone else from council want to respond to public comment? I see no other names. And then council, we're right around 7 o'clock. Does anybody want to take a short break or should we just move on? We'll take a 10-minute break and come back just before, we'll come back right around 7:10. Thank you, everyone.
Should we conclude the meeting now, Mayor?
You were on time, Member Russell. We actually still had a little bit time left, so I guess we'll go ahead and begin. Moving on to agenda item 9, consent agenda items. I do have 4 items that are being pulled tonight, 9B3, and then all 3 under 9C. So if any other agenda items to pull tonight? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A1, 2, and 9B1 and 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Nudenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
All votes cast, let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. 9B3, yep, updating the current off-leash ordinance. Member Woodward, you had a question about some of the changes that may have not made it, but I'll let you ask your questions and we'll see if we have to bring staff up for that question.
Thank you. I have a correction on the summary on page 3, B, exceptions, on the very last line of number 1, where it says through February 28th. That should be changed to the last day of February, as written in the minutes of August 15th. There was a motion by Mr. Ward to change that. And then further down in the minutes, there was another motion to change all items pertaining to the end date to the last day of February. So I just think we need to get the end of February out of there and make it the last day of February.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Just looking over the ordinance itself, I do see that there were changes made to state the last day of February. So it looks like the only change needs to be made to the summary, but the ordinance itself looks to be correct on my end.
Okay.
If I'm,
I
City
didn't
Clerk, do you
get
have
a copy of the ordinance.
Okay. So I think we may be okay there. City Clerk, did you get that change in terms of just the summary, just for
Yes.
the members of the public?
We're changing the summary to change February 28th to the last day of February, as in the minutes, and I didn't catch the last item.
And within the summary itself, just so I guess that would be under,
Okay.
yeah, so at the top, it doesn't affect the ordinance because it does look like the ordinance is correct. And City Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong there. But it looks like you're nodding your head yes in agreement.
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. So Member Woodward, would you make a motion to approve 9B3?
I will move to approve what was it?
9B3.
9B3.
Perfect. Could I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Member Wink. Can we please vote?
Can
Oh,
I-
sorry, go ahead, Member Russell.
Actually, and I know that I voted for this the last time because the permanent fence didn't change anything, but I voted no every other time, and so I am going to change my vote to no. Because I do think that the things that they have brought up this evening are absolutely correct. So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Russell. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Nudenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay, the 1 nay being Councilmember Russell.
Perfect. Moving on to 9C1. We have, see here, I think this may have been, Member Russell, you pulled this item. Yeah, regarding the investment policy statement for the city's 401A and 457 retirement plan. We have Finance Manager Kevin Ingles here for any questions you may have, Member Russell.
Okay, thank you. I did send some questions, but when I was looking through this, I had several questions that did not occur to me when we first did this in study session. Because when I went back to look in the study session, in the, hang on, that's the wrong one. This one right here. I think it's the council communication. It talks about let me see. In 2019, this is under the analysis on the study session. In 2019, the city contracted with Innovest Portfolio Solutions LLC to serve as co-fiduciary and answer the following questions to provide solutions. Did council approve this? Did council approve that in 2019 to hire Innovest to look for answers to these questions?
Mayor and council.
Good evening.
Finance manager. Yes, this was brought to council in 2019, mainly because of the price of the contract. I believe it was $80,000 at that time.
Okay, is it possible that we could get a copy of that? So, because in 2019, all right, if council approved it, did then council get a report on all of the answers to these 4 questions? Are there plan features the city should be utilizing? Are the record keeping fees reasonable? Are there issues with the investment options available to participants, and are there opportunities to reduce investment fees? Was that reported to council prior to 2020?
I know we did receive a report from the investment advisor. I will have to research whether it was provided to council.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Then, the next paragraph says, in addition, Innovest assisted the city in creating an informal advisory retirement plan committee made up of city employees from finance and human resources, and the IPS outlines the responsibilities of the committee members. Who are the committee members advising? They're an advisory committee, but advisory to who?
So we're in the process of making that a more formal committee. Currently, the responsibility or the ability to make plan changes lie with the finance director.
Okay, so currently the finance director does that. I think that answered one of the questions I had. So who was previously, probably previous to 2019 or even 2019 and 2020, was the finance director was
Yes.
making all of these decisions. And then the Innovest helps appoint a committee of employees, but now staff, I'm assuming, is asking council to give this committee authority to go ahead and do these responsibilities when council really wasn't. It seems to me like council is a little bit responsible for some of these things.
And all we're asking for this evening is for you to adopt the investment policy statement
And once we do, the committee will have the final authority.
once the committee is formalized.
Well, the committee will be formalized because it's the same people that have been on this committee, correct?
Mayor, I think we have some information
Yeah,
from.
if I can just, jump in, Member Russell, so when former finance director Maria Sabata started with the city, she found out that it was solely the responsibility of the finance director to do all investments on behalf of the city. And so she made a recommendation at the time, which predated me and several of us, to contract with Innovest, which has experience in doing this for other cities, and that's why they're labeled as a co-fiduciary. At the time, a kind of informal committee, as Manager Ingalls mentioned, was formed, which includes me, the finance director, the HR director, Manager Ingalls, and budget administrator Nolan. Several months ago, though, we did start. So their purpose, and I actually contacted former Director Sabata to kind of better understand it. Their purpose was basically to provide informal advice to the finance director and to Innovest. We feel that it should be more formalized, and City Attorney Niles can maybe add on to this. We're working with outside counsel to basically understand a little bit more about this process and what that committee should look like. We did find a draft a charter that's used by the city of Boulder for their committee, which I think what we're looking to do possibly would be to have a few appointments of the finance director and a few of the city manager that are a part of it, and to formalize this process. But essentially, it was always in the hands of the finance director. We then added an expert firm to help us, and this advisory committee is really just meant to provide additional advice. But we hope to formalize that when we finish the research with outside counsel.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I feel like we weren't told all that information up front and really had no reason to ask until this time when more information came up. And so I appreciate that information. I don't have any problems with Innovest. I think they're doing a great job with the NARP board. So, all right, thank you for that information. I do appreciate it. And there's one other question that I had on here, but it may apply to the next one. When is an employee eligible to contribute money to this plan? And I think that probably goes along.
Yeah, so they're eligible to start contributing when they start as an employee. So there are a couple different plans that are available. The 457 is a completely optional plan. It's regulated by the federal government. Each year they've been increasing the cap, but that's, I believe they can contribute up to $19,500. That's the 457 plan. That is not matched at this time at all by the city. It's completely optional. We then have, a lot of cities do have a formal defined benefit pension plan, like a traditional pension. We do not offer those, save for police and fire. So police is handled differently. We handle a part of that, but they go through a statewide organization. And then if they are members of our union, the Englewood Employees Association, when they start, they can choose. They can choose NERP, which is a defined benefit plan, or they can choose the 401A. All of their all of their employees that are labeled as MSC or MSCH are automatically enrolled in the 401A plan. And they're basically prescribed what their match is. So they put in a certain amount, and then it's matched a certain amount. Right now, the vestation schedule for, as Member Wink mentioned in answering the question, for basically employees that are not executives, it takes 5 years to match. But to vest. For executives, it takes, they vest right now immediately. So we do hope this will bring parity by having everybody on the same schedule, so they would vest in a year. So after a year, they would be fully vested, but they wouldn't vest immediately, but they can start contributing right away.
Actually, can I ask another question? Because I did
Member
put, how many employees are members of the 401A and 457 plans?
Yep.
Respectively.
So this will, the numbers I'm going to give you include retirees, but I'll have that broken out. So the 401A, which again is mandatory for MSC and MSCH and optional for, it's choice for EEA employees, is we have 270 active and we have 158 retirees. The 457, which again is completely optional and not matched at all, has 198 active participants and 148 retirees.
Okay, and were they notified of the plan changes?
So there's been some internal discussions, but we actually we didn't plan to notify them until council acted on it. We didn't want to, move forward before council made a decision on it, but we do have communication ready to go if council does approve it.
Well, however, that concerns me a little bit because I would like the employees to know it before council moves forward with approving it, and then you get information back that all of the employees aren't happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other, Member Woodward?
Yes, when did the city quit making available to non-emergency employees NERP?
So NERP is still available to employees who are EEA, Englewood Employee Association employees. When they start, they have a choice of that or the 401A.
And they can't do both?
No, they have to make a choice.
Okay. But they are being offered NERP.
Yes. It's part of the new hire process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
We're talking about money that belongs exclusively to the employees of the city of Inglewood. We're not talking about taxpayer dollars here, correct?
So,
These retirement plans belong to the employees, the staff. There's not city money in
the
these.
457 is staff only. The 401 does have a city contribution.
Right, but we contribute that to the employees for their retirement benefit as part of the benefits package that we provide.
Correct.
So we're not taking taxpayer dollars. I mean, it's basically, essentially, at the time that we give it to the employees and they become fully vested, it belongs to the employees.
That's correct, yes.
So we're not talking about increasing the risk to the Inglewood taxpayers here, so much as we're talking about allowing the employees to assess the risk that they're comfortable with via this group that is making the decisions on the investment policy.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. City Manager Lewis, you have your light on. Do you have a question or a comment?
Just a response to one of the previous questions. I did make the call not to notify employees, and that was mainly because I can't imagine a circumstance in which employees wouldn't like this, with the exception of one member of the executive team who has not been here a year. It happens to be the person who made this proposal, but he will be affected detrimentally, could be, by the fact that we're changing his immediate vesting to 1 year. But I did instruct staff to hold off on getting hopes up until council had acted on this. So I apologize if that was not the desire of council, but just wanted to not get expectations up.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Member Woodward, did you have a comment or a question?
No, I think I'm fine, thank you.
Any further comments or questions from council? Member Russell.
I have a question for Mayor Pro Tem. So because it is not taxpayer money, are you suggesting that it doesn't matter whether we approve this or not?
I wouldn't say it doesn't matter. I'd say that's an argument for approval. The money belongs to the employees. Why should we not let them manage it? Why should the 7 of us say, hey, we're going to tell you what you can and can't invest in, or what is or isn't good for you?
Well, okay, can I respond to that? The thing that I am concerned about is staff is picking the employees that will represent them. Certainly, it's clear from the paperwork that the employees themselves manage all of their own retirement fund. So I'm just saying, is it something that, if it belongs to the employees, then why does council have to even vote on this?
Go ahead, Assistant City Manager.
Sure, I can jump in really quick. So one of the things, and I let Manager Ingalls also jump in, but it is a contract. Part of it is a contract with a company called Mission Square. It used to be ICMA RC, and so they basically kind of are the point people, so to speak, for the employees. They're the people that answer their questions about their retirement. They have the platform that employees can go into and see their retirement information. So because it is a contract, that's really why it's before you tonight. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Any further comments there? Member Woodward.
Yes, I just want to verify or clear up something. The employees have the opportunity to select from a menu of funds recommended by Innovest, correct? So it isn't somebody else putting money in a fund where they didn't make a decision. The employee is making a decision on what funds they are going into, or if they're going in a lifetime 2035 type of program where the funds are made up of things that get more conservative as time goes on. They have those choices as I have read this, so.
Yeah, both of these plans are fully self-directed by the employees.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C1?
I move to approve 9C1.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Member Russell?
I am not gonna support this, because I don't totally understand council's responsibility. Obviously, council wasn't responsible before the director of finance was running this. I understand what they're doing, but I don't understand why we need to do this. I think that we may be putting our seal of approval on us that might cause us to be liable. So I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Woodward, did you have a comment?
I will be supporting this because I see it as the vesting is the big part of this, the main part of this, which is changing to the benefit of the employees. And I think that's a real positive thing, especially in a market like we have today where it's so hard. And I think we've all seen
I'm sorry.
Member Woodward, I was going to stop you. Member Woodward, that's actually going to be the next item. This is just the approval on the policy. You can save your thought for the next one. If no further comments, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
You got 6 ayes and 1 nay being Councilmember Russell.
I'll leave this open to either Mayor Pro Tem Ward or Member Russell, but this is a resolution to revise the vesting period for the 401A retirement plan. Assistant City Manager Dodd, you'll be taking questions on this comment, but Mayor Pro Tem, did you have initial thoughts on this or initial questions, I guess I should ask?
I don't really think I have any questions other than the question of whether there's any evidence that decreasing the vesting period improves employee retention. Because it seems to me, as I think through it, that the vesting period serves as a disincentive for leaving prior to 5 years of service. It's a little counterintuitive.
Completely understand that, and the way I look at it is that each employee has different motivators, and so in one way I do look at it as every employee is on a different schedule, right? So people who have been here 20 or 30 years, they vested a long time ago, but I think in a way it shows respect towards employees, that we value them is one of the ways that we value them. We really are trying to kind of look at all the different things we offer as an employer, and in a cost-effective way. Say some prospective employees, they look at retirement as their number one driver. Some look at health insurance as their number one driver. Some look at flexible work. Many look at salary. Although we found actually by doing our exit interviews that salary is not actually a driving motivator for people to leave, which is very interesting. But we do, when we look at other cities and we look at things that they offer, we feel that this is one that's going to essentially be cost neutral to the city because it is coming out of forfeiture funds. So we think it would actually be a draw for new employees. And we do hope, that employees will stay longer than 5 years. That's certainly something we could ask Innovest if they are able to do, if they have any data or if they're able to find any data about an analysis, what the relationship is. But we do feel that it just will show employees respect, especially those that are driven by this as one of their motivators. And we also really feel it will help draw new employees to the city. Again, we're looking at doing a compensation study. If council approves the implementation, that's going to cost money. We're looking at some possible ideas for health insurance. That would cost money. This really is not going to cost general fund dollars to the city. So that's why we thought this would be a positive a positive thing for employees.
Thank you. Member Russell?
Thank you. Can you define forfeiture fund? The forfeiture fund, where does that money come from?
Going to ask if Manager Ingalls, because he can give a more definitive answer than I can.
So that's related to the vesting schedule. If an employee, now it's a graduated schedule up to 5 years, then you're 100% vested. So if you leave before you're 100% vested, you forfeit the city portion of the contributions that you've collected.
Okay, so isn't that kind of an oxymoron? Forfeiture, you're forfeiting something that doesn't belong to them. And the city isn't paying it either. It may be something that the city put in a budget somewhere, but it is not being forfeited if they don't stay until the end. So do we have a forfeiture fund where all that money that those people forfeit goes into?
Yes, we do.
We do? Doesn't that
Yes.
not make sense on general accounting principles?
Once it's forfeited, it becomes the city's funds back. And we're able to use it either to match contributions for other newer employees, or we can withdraw it and use it for other purposes.
Okay.
Any further questions, Member Russell?
I just would like to, I agree with what Mayor Pro Tem Ward brought up about it is not a retention policy. It is a policy that says, take my money and run. A lot of people will decide that I'm gonna stay this long because if I stay this long, I will have this much money. If I don't, I mean, it's interesting, the example that you used, that employee left a place that vested immediately and came here, knowing the policy here, and now we want to change our policy. Is there any proof? I didn't see anything in any of the paperwork we had now that it does help retention. There's just this little statement that says may improve retention. It is not a policy that to me would dictate that it's going to retain employees. It's going to cause them to pick up and leave sooner with money that the city has offered.
If
Go
I
ahead,
can,
City
Mayor.
Manager Lewis.
I think that it would be almost impossible to try to quantify that because, again, as Assistant City Manager Dodd said, this is as much about recruitment as it is about retention. So we would never know unless someone just said, oh, I turned down that job because of the vesting schedule. We would never be able to quantify that. So I'm not sure we could ever give you data like that.
Okay, so there's only 2 cities that vest immediately. And I do believe that the director levels should be, and the employee levels should be the same. But most people that come here don't even really know their job for a year or more. So there's only 2 cities that do it. Anyway, thank you.
Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, City Manager Lewis.
You're exactly right, Member Russell, in terms of, making these consistent. The other thing that I'll mention is that the 1-year vesting will align with our 1-year probationary period. We're the only city that I know of in the state that has a full 1-year probationary period where we can terminate without really any liability. Because our probationary period is so long. So if an employee is not working out, this aligns with our vesting period that we would help them exit the organization with no liabilities or penalties to us, nor would we be paying out their vesting.
Mayor Pro Tem?
You just brought up another question in my mind, and that is in regards to the probationary period. Is that set by policy that you have the authority to set, or is that a part and parcel of the contract that we have with our unionized employees?
I'll need someone else to answer the unionized, but for MSC and MSCH employees, it is under my purview. It appears that perhaps the unions are under the same policy as the general employees.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C2?
I move to approve 9C2.
Thank you, Member Noonan. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. Any comments from council? Member Noonan.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in and explain how I'm going to vote tonight. I support this change, and I, hear the questions from the Mayor Pro Tem, and I hear the questions from Member Russell. For me, what's compelling is something that Assistant City Manager Dodd said about, this is about showing respect for employees, but also to make us a competitive employer in this space. When I look at the other cities, what they're doing, we're not going to immediate like 2 other cities, but we are becoming competitive when we're all trying to hire the same types of municipal employees that other cities are also trying to hire. So this is about, I think, becoming competitive in the hiring process. We retain employees through a myriad of factors, including our culture, right? And the work and how we engage with our staff. And so it doesn't have to be, I think, just retention. I think being a competitive hire, as someone who is involved in a career where I'm trying to hire right now, I'm very aware of how hard and how difficult it is. I'm proud of Inglewood. I think it's a great place to work. And if this can help communicate the type of culture we have, the respect that we're showing our staff to come and be part of what we're doing, then I'm happy to do that. I think that it's a nice balance. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into it from our staff, and I'll be supporting it tonight.
Thank you, Member Noonan. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm definitely sensitive to the comments that Member Noonan made, and I do want the city to be a competitive employer. What's causing me a little heartburn is that this is a very aggressive change. We're going from 5 years to 1 year. When we look at the chart and the comparison for the cities, we're roughly in the middle for our percentage that we offer. And as I understood what we heard tonight, if an employee leaves before 5 years, they still are able to retain a portion of that money based on how long they were here. So it's not a full forfeiture if you leave early, you just don't get the whole pot until 5 years. I think the current plan is reasonable, and I would potentially be open to dropping the vesting period to even 3 years. But this 1 year is just a little too aggressive for my taste, so I'm very likely going to be a no tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Anderson.
I'll weigh in on why I'm supportive of this tonight, and I agree with many of Member Noonenkamp's reasons as well. But I think the idea of employee retention, if you have to hold an employee's retirement over them for 5 years in order to keep them, then you're doing it wrong. We should make Inglewood a great place to work. And make people want to stay. And if they have to move somewhere after a year or two, they because of changes in their life or something like that, they shouldn't be punished for that. I have seen people I know who have been in vesting scenarios where they've worked many years but never vested because they couldn't quite get to the hours because they had to work part-time because of family situations, things like that. So I think these vesting things are just a bad way. Long vesting scenarios are a bad way to treat employees. So I'm totally in favor of the 1 year.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell.
Thank you. Member Anderson, we're not talking about long vesting. It's a couple years. It's kind of like my children. I was vested in my children. I love my children. But if they wanted their allowance, they had to mow the lawn. It's in my best interest that they would mow the lawn for me to give them the money. But if they don't mow the lawn, they're not getting the money. And we have hired employees to do something. We're not asking them to work here forever and lose any money. It is an incentive to keep them working here longer. And we haven't gotten any figures on retention. I actually would like for this council to get copies of the exit interviews, perhaps not with names, but so this council would know why people are leaving this city. We have had a 25% turnover every year in employees, and that in 4 years we have a complete turnover. If we don't retain employees, then there's a different problem than the vesting issue.
Thank you, Member Russell.
Thank you.
I'll weigh in as well. I will be in support of this tonight for many of the reasons that have been mentioned earlier tonight. I've had this conversation with the city manager that one of my biggest fears right now is just the fact that we do have a lot of open positions. And so I do see this as a recruitment this is another nugget in order to get people to seek out Inglewood for another place, for where they can work. We've seen it in the past when we've been talking about the strategic plan that we are just not completing some of the projects or putting some things on pause because we just don't have enough workers. So anything we can do or anything that staff feels is compelling enough that may provide another nugget for workers to come and work in Inglewood, I'm all for. So I do see this as a benefit and will be in support of that, support of this tonight. With no further comments tonight, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Nay.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
The vote is 5 ayes, 2 nays, the 2 nays being Member Russell and Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Thank you, City Clerk. Moving on to 9C3, this is the contract with Bridge House. I believe we have Assistant City Manager also answering questions. Member Russell, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you. My question is, why is Inglewood contributing more than Littleton? That's what I put down that I wanted to know. I mean, Littleton it's pending $500,000. The city of Inglewood is donating $850,000 of ARPA taxpayer money.
Yeah, thank you, Member Russell, for the question. So unfortunately, it's hard to predict or, determine what another city, another governing body could do. We typically, with the Tri-Cities, usually Littleton and Inglewood are 50-50, well, not 50-50, we're usually 40 to 45%, and we usually have almost always contributed the same amounts. And then Sheridan usually contributes a significantly smaller amount, which is usually 10 or 15%. When we entered this, obviously Bridge House has a higher cost, about $5.6 million to enter. We tried to look at kind of our past contributions and kind of the past split, and we did share with the city of Littleton very early on the amount that we were considering as a city. I don't think their number has been finalized yet, but I was told a few weeks ago that they were looking at $500,000 now. I think Sheridan is $250,000, and I think it's going to their council next week. So I think that's a pretty solid figure. But unfortunately, I don't know the specifics of why Littleton decided to contribute that. They were aware of what we were planning on contributing.
Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Member Woodward.
I guess I have a comment.
Let's make a motion and then we can open up to comments. So with no further questions, can I get a motion to approve 9C3?
I move to approve 9C3.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Newnenkamp. And Member Woodward, I'll let you open up to comments.
I think part of why they may be looking at different amount of funding is Inglewood has a bigger problem with homelessness than Littleton does, simply because of location. We're the first stop outside of Denver. And I think because of that, we do have more homeless. Littleton has homeless, certainly, and so does Sheridan. I wouldn't expect Sheridan to contribute the same amount. I would hope that Littleton would contribute more because they are a larger city. But I think that's a big part of what people are looking at. And again, these are federal funds that were specific, as I understood it, from in ARPA and discussed about homelessness and stuff. So I'll be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a late question, if I may. The area where this bridge house is going, is it zoned appropriately for that type of operation currently?
Yeah, so I wish someone from community development was here to answer this question more specifically. But yes, it is. It does need to go through the P&Z process, which Birch House is working on a date with community development. But yes, my understanding from community development is that it is. Again, I'm going to speak now, and I believe it's correct, but I would like to get it verified. Is that one of the planners did research and basically feels that it falls under the zoning for a vocational school that we have as a allowable use of this area. So that's where I believe they got the justification for it.
But it's a residential vocational school, is it not? Or I'm mistaken on that?
We'll get information back to council on that. If I can make that a council request, I'll be glad to do that. But it does, I believe, require conditional use, which terminates at Planning and Zoning Commission. So they will have an opportunity to review this.
Okay, and that brings another question then. If we allocate funding and that portion doesn't come through, what happens? Have we already written them a check for $850,000 or?
No, so we did, so the planning manager worked with a deputy city attorney to craft language that's in the contract that basically requires Bridge House to complete everything they need to complete through planning and zoning, and the money can't be released until that's done.
Perfect, thank you.
Member Russell.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this, not necessarily because Littleton is not putting in as much money as Englewood. ARPA funds were designed for infrastructure. We have major problems in Inglewood with roads and bridges, and we have put far more towards cross purposes, bridge house, and other things than we have to our roads and bridges. And it's going to come back to bite us. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Any further comments from council? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nudenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay, the 1 nay being Member Russell.
Thank you, City Clerk. No public hearing items for tonight. We're moving on to 11A1. This is Council Bill 47, IGA with Arapahoe County accepting a grant from ACOS for Bates Logan Park improvements. And we have Director Underhill as well as Manager of Open Space, Adrian Torres, here tonight. Good evening, Director Underhill.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I introduce Open Space Manager Adrian Torres to talk about the IGA and the improvements we'll be doing to Bates Logan Park, I just want to address the dog waste stations that was brought up this evening and the fact we do stock them as needed in our parks when we see they're getting low. We also do ask residents or those who use our parks to only take what is needed when they need it. So we're happy to answer the council request, but just wanted to give that update. And I'll introduce Open Space Manager Adrian Torres, and I believe we do have a presentation. There we go. No, not that one. Keep going. There we are. Here you go.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us here tonight. We're excited to announce that we received a $500,000 grant from Arapahoe County Open Space for improvements at Bates and Logan. The improvements will include a new ADA accessible restroom and picnic pavilion. I'd also like to take this moment to thank former Open Space Manager Dave Lee and Communications Coordinator Julie Madden for putting this grant together. This project would not be possible without their dedication and commitment to our department. So I kind of just wanted to show you guys the fun pictures. So this is the current conditions at Bates Logan. This is the new pavilion. It's kind of going to go, we're going to put them closer together. So the restroom will be on the same footprint that it is now, and the pavilion will be just to the north of where the restroom is now. And this is what the new restroom would look like. So Director Underhill and I are here to answer any of your questions.
Mr. Torres, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions from council? I have a couple. So going back to I'll start with the restrooms. I know that some of the residents for some of the other restrooms like around Romans Park they get closed down during the winter. Would that be the same for Bates Logan Park in terms of just, what I understand is that the Romans Park, the piping or something like that doesn't allow us to keep them open year round.
Correct.
Would that be the same for Bates Logan Park in terms of the restrooms?
Yes.
Okay. What would we have to do in order to keep the bathrooms open year round? Is it that sizable of a cost in order to improve the piping in order for it not to freeze, or?
We can look into costs and
Okay.
bring that back to you, but it gets very cold in the winter here
Right.
in Colorado, and we have froze several restrooms. So.
Another question, I'll keep asking my questions, but are we set on the design for the park, and at least in terms of just the pavilion and the restrooms, or will there still be public comment for any type of changes that may occur?
This is just for phase one.
Okay.
We'll apply for a grant for phase two, and then we'll have more public comment.
Okay. Okay, so phase one would just be the structures that we saw on the
Correct.
presentation time.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Those are all my questions. Thank you very much for your work on this. Seeing no other questions, can we get a motion to approve 11A1?
I'd like to approve, or move to approve 11A1.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second?
Thank you, Member Noonkamp. Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention, like you did, the amount of money that your predecessor, Dave Lee, brought into the city over his years of service. I didn't get to say goodbye to him before he left, so if you're watching, Dave, goodbye. But I hope that trend continues. So, thank you.
I'll let him know. Thanks.
Well said, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Torres and Director Underhill, for the presentation. Moving on to 11C1, this is the Go EV presentation. Staff recommends City Council approve a resolution establishing a EV action plan for the City of Englewood. And we have Sustainability Coordinator Melissa England here tonight. Good evening, Ms. England.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. I am here tonight to first present or introduce to you all the Go EV resolution. This is a resolution that was put together by the Sustainability Commission members and myself. So when the sustainability plan was updated earlier this year, a new project in development was to investigate the Go EV commitment. And so this entails a town or a city committing to undertaking an EV action plan. So as you all know, in August of this year, the city was accepted by Excel to partake once again in the Partners in Energy program, and specifically to create our EV action plan, the city's first ever one. And just as a reminder, this program is completely free to the city to partake in. And having the city partake in this program also marks a really appropriate time for this resolution to come before City Council for you all to either approve or not approve of. I am also here tonight to introduce our speaker, Matt Frommer, who is the Senior Transportation Associate for the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, or SWEEP. And he is joining us virtually tonight because he actually is on the mend from COVID. So thank you so much, Matt, for graciously joining us tonight. He is also the Go EV representative, and I'm sure he's going to be going over this in more detail in his presentation, but Go EV is a collaboration between 5 nonprofits. So he's here tonight to present to you all on what Go EV is and also answer any questions that you all may have. So I will now kick it over to Matt.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, excellent. So good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Fromer. I work with the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, or SWEEP. Sorry, I'm not there with you in person tonight, but glad to be able to call in virtually. I have a few slides to share just to run through what the Go EV City campaign is, what the resolution is, and then I'm here to answer any questions you have about transportation electrification at all. Are we able to bring up the slides I sent over? There we go.
We're
Nice.
able to see it on
Okay.
our side, but you may not be. Are you able to see it on your side, Mr. Frommer?
Yes, I see them. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so as Melissa said, this is a collaboration between SWEEP, Sierra Club, Conservation Colorado, COPERG, and CLEAR, which is our sort of partner nonprofit on the Western Slope working on clean energy and electric transportation. We launched in 2018, and the first Go EV community was Boulder County. And I'll have a list here in a second with the others. If you can go to the next slide. I guess first, just to ground this and why electric transportation is important. So electrification is really critical to achieving our ambitious climate targets. Transportation is a leading source of greenhouse gas pollution and a leading source of local air pollution that creates ground level ozone, as you can see in the graph on the left there. And we're really having a difficult time grappling with transportation as we sort of increase the size of our vehicles and drive further distances with some of the more sprawling land use patterns. On the right, you'll see our climate targets from the state's greenhouse gas roadmap. So the target for transportation is a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas pollution by 2030, and that's compared to 2005 levels. To do that, we need sort of a combination of electrifying all the vehicles on the road, so cars, trucks, and buses. Number two, plugging them into a clean grid, so transitioning the grid away from fossil fuels and toward renewables. And then the third leg of that stool is sort of just reducing overall driving. So we have a state target to reduce VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, by about 10% to help reduce emissions quickly enough to hit these really ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets. I should mention, so the target is 940,000 EVs by 2030. Today, this is a little bit out of date, but today we have about 61,000 EVs in the state of Colorado. But the market's growing very quickly. Earlier this year, we were at about 10% EV market share. So 1 in 10 new cars sold are electric. You figure we sell about 350,000 cars in the state every year. So you add, let's say, 35,000 to the 61,000 existing, and you're starting to really ramp up the number of EVs on the road pretty quickly. Next slide, please. Okay, so when I first made a Go EV City presentation in 2018, I think we had the Nissan Leaf, maybe the Tesla Model S and the X. We're waiting on the Model 3 and a couple other models out there. Not many, we're looking ahead to more. If you can go to the next slide. These are how many models we have today, and you can see they're sort of extending off of the page here. So lots of new EV models on the market, coming in all shapes and sizes, from sedans to crossovers, SUVs, and now even pickup trucks with the first Ford F-150 Lightnings coming to Colorado. I think the town of Breckenridge just got one for their town fleet. So lots of models coming, are already on the market today, and coming in the next few years. And I think this new federal bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, with its investment in clean manufacturing and EV production specifically, will really help speed up that process. Next slide, please. So here's a list of the Go EV City communities. So far, we actually have 12 in the time since I sent these slides over. The city of Glenwood Springs adopted a Go EV resolution. So yeah, we've got cities and towns and counties from across the state, a lot of Front Range, but also on the Western Slope. Next slide, please. The Go EV City campaign, it really was inspired by the Ready for 100 campaign, which is really focused on 100% renewable energy by 2030. And there are 15 communities that had adopted that goal. In some ways, transportation, local governments have a little bit more control over their transportation future, since cities tend to operate and own their own fleet of vehicles. We've got partnerships with school districts and transit agencies, control over building codes and things that could affect the sort of availability of EV charging infrastructure. And so we think this is a really good fit, where local governments can really drive change and accelerate the transition to electric transportation. Next slide, please. So the Go EV City commitment is really built on these 4 pillars. The first is the city commits to transition its own fleet of vehicles to zero emission vehicles. We kind of leave the door open a bit there. Zero emission usually encompasses electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and even things like hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And we think that they could play a larger role in the future with larger semi trucks and buses. So a commitment to electrify the city's own fleet. Number two is to work with local transit agencies and school districts to transition to zero emission buses. Third is to work with taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts to get to zero emission vehicles. And we could sort of lump in micro mobility there. So things like electric bike share and scooters would be considered electric transportation as well. The Uber and Lyft, I mean, they're especially important since they tend to drive 5 to 10 times more than a personally owned vehicle in a year. So if you replace one Uber gas car with an electric, it's the same as to replacing 5 to 10 privately owned vehicles. And then the fourth here is sets a goal to transition all vehicles in the community to zero emission vehicles. Next slide, please. Here are some of the goals we've seen from other Go EV communities around the state. So it really started with Boulder County, and they set sort of a commitment to electrify any new vehicles that they were purchasing, starting with sedans and then SUVs by 2025 and pickup trucks by 2030. Again, this was back in 2018 when there were no electric SUVs or pickup trucks. So somewhat of a leap of faith by Boulder County. We now are seeing electric SUVs come to market, like, sort of the Toyota RAV4 Prime is a plug-in hybrid electric. It's very good for fleets, as is the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid electric. So there are options out there for electric SUVs and pickups. And we've seen cities and counties more recently sort of move up those deadlines for the all-electric purchase. Another example would be City of Boulder, where they have sort of an EV first procurement policy. They sort of set it as the default, as long as it fits within the budget. And then they run a total cost of ownership. So not just the upfront cost of the vehicle, but fuel and maintenance costs over time and the social cost of carbon. On the fuel piece, we know that EVs really save money. I myself drive an EV, and because I'm an EV nerd, I have a huge spreadsheet of how much I've spent on charging. And 90% of my charging takes place at home, where I spend about the equivalent of 80 cents a gallon to charge my EV. I never have to go to a gas station. So huge savings there of the total cost of ownership. You can go to the next slide. Here are some of the commitments on electric buses. So Boulder already has 4 electric hop buses. They're ordering more. I know Englewood is in RTD's district. At one point, actually, RTD had the largest electric bus fleet with the mall ride. They have 17 more electric buses on order. We really want to push them to electrify more quickly, but there are certainly challenges, right, with the grid, with depots, and so I think local governments have a role to play in really helping RTD to electrify its routes with the charging infrastructure and with the advocacy. And then sort of the big mover in the state is in Summit County. The Summit Stage just received a $35 million federal grant to build an electric bus operations center where they plan to house dozens of electric buses up in the mountains. And then, of course, with electric school buses, we have new state funding from Senate Bill 193, coupled with federal funding from the IIJA last year. So a lot of money to help school districts replace their existing diesel fleet with electric. Next slide. So this slide, as I mentioned, the importance of Uber, Lyft, and taxi electrification. I'd also highlight here delivery vehicles, which have certainly sort of ramped up in the last couple of years as we've really sort of shifted to e-commerce. But really important to electrify the medium and heavy duty vehicle fleet. So Amazon Prime vans all the way up to semi trucks, and really think about how to charge those vehicles. We've also seen cities invest in things like electric car share, particularly around affordable housing where people may not have the money to afford their own vehicle. And so to couple that with charging and subsidize it for users is a great program. And then electric bike share and other micromobility options like scooters as well. In the next slide. Okay, and the fourth pillar here, to electrify all vehicles in the community. These are just some of the targets we've seen from other communities around the state. I think which align pretty well with what the city of Englewood is proposing. And I just want to list too a few of the implementation tools at the bottom. So things like EV ready building codes. I think it makes good sense to include the infrastructure in new buildings during new construction as opposed to a retrofit. I mean, it can be 6 to 8 times more expensive to install these chargers later in multifamily buildings and commercial buildings. And so local governments do have control over what gets built. Things like investment in public EV charging stations. I think also the multifamily housing is really important. Things like EV education and awareness campaigns, ride and drives for communities, dealership engagement, and then other incentives and perks to sort of encourage electrification and lower those total costs to get the market moving more quickly. Next slide. Okay, and then I think this is the final slide. I just wanted to highlight some of the electric vehicle readiness plans and strategies we've seen from around the state and encourage Englewood to look at these plans since I think they're pretty good. So yeah, this is just like probably half the list. I know some cities have been applying for DOLA funding to help cover the costs of these fleet electrification plans or EV readiness plans. So I encourage Englewood to do so as well. Next slide. Okay, that's it for me. I just have my email up there, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions, or happy to answer them now.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Fromer. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Fromer or Ms. England? We'll start with you, Member Woodward.
Yes, question. On a charging station, is the plug or the outlet, is that the same for Tesla, Ford F-150, Polestar, Porsche, and all the others?
Yeah. So what I would say is, yeah. Sorry, did you finish your question?
No, it is, okay, so it is the same.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
No, it's actually not the same. Just to explain. So with the home charging, which I'd say is 85 to 90% of charging, the plugs are standardized. With the public fast charging, which is what we're seeing along highways in urban centers, I mean, really important for people who don't have access to home charging. There are generally 3 plug types. So Tesla has their own proprietary charger. And then there are 2, there's sort of the Asian standard, which is called CHAdeMO, and then the European and American standard, which is called CCS. Those 2 are now merging basically into a CCS. So moving forward, it is starting to standardize, and you will have any vehicle will have access to EV charging stations. Currently, that is true. Like with the state funding for EV chargers around the state, there are both the CCS and CHAdeMO plug types. So whether you have a Nissan or a Chevy, you can plug in.
Okay, so 3 now and 2 hopefully soon.
Right, and everyone's badgering Elon Musk to create an adapter so everyone can use the Tesla charger. So I expect that will happen in the next couple of years.
Actually, Mr. Fromer, it's been decided that Tesla will make them available by the end of the year. So
there we go. Okay.
Member Nudenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Fromer, thank you so much for being here and for the presentation. I have a question. We've heard from our school district that the electric buses are significantly heavier than the traditional buses, and that would actually require additional infrastructure, potentially a new foundation for their bus barn. Have you run into this problem with other communities, and how are school districts who are potentially strapped for cash addressing that issue?
Yeah, really good question. I actually hadn't heard that exact concern for school buses. I have done quite a bit of work on the transit bus electrification side, and I have heard from RTD and other transit agencies that they need money to upgrade their depots. Not just foundation is one thing, but also more space to work on the buses, particularly the top of the bus where the battery is located, and other systems. And so one thing I'd point to is with Senate Bill 260 that we passed in 2021, we set up 3 electric transportation enterprises. There's one for electric transit buses. There's one that's called the Clean Fleet Enterprise, and that one would basically award grants to things like electric school bus projects and other large heavy duty vehicles. And I believe the money is like one of the allowable uses of those funds is to upgrade depots. So it's there are a few different eligible uses. It's like vehicle replacement, charging infrastructure. There's planning for fleet electrification, and then I think the fourth is to upgrade the depots. So I'd encourage a school district to connect with the Clean Fleet Enterprise at CDPHE with that question.
I appreciate the answer. Obviously, we're a smaller city with a small school district, and that was raised as a particular challenge for them, and even kind of beginning the conversation around this topic. I also have a question. Maybe this is for Ms. England. Can you help me understand, reading through the materials, reading through the resolution and the information we received tonight, what is the direct benefit to the city for joining this group versus doing our own EV readiness plan on our own without the resolution? And what are we committing ourselves to? In some of the language it says, we create the plan that we choose to implement or not, and then other portions of the resolution, it seems like we're committing to quite a lot. So help me understand what this does for us.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely could have been confusing because we're already doing the EV action plan. Matt, definitely come in if I miss something, but some of the benefits I see are that we're already going to be doing the work for the EV action plan, and by passing this resolution, we get more positive publicity for joining them, for saying that we're doing this EV action plan. Another thing I will say is that the Sustainability Commission members really helped shape the goals and edit this resolution, i.e. Englewood residents. So by passing it, we really can show that it's residents' voices that are going to be really dictating and influencing this plan. So those are the two main benefits that I see from passing it. Matt, I don't know if you have any that you want to add.
Yeah, that was well said. I mean, yeah, I would mention sort of the opportunity to celebrate the city of Englewood for taking action on climate and helping to accelerate the transition to electric vehicles and save its residents money by increasing access to charging and just sort of speeding along the transition. I also think just with any of these policies, we tend to build them on a foundation of goals and then develop the policies to implement those goals. So you think about sort of the state's climate targets, the greenhouse gas reduction targets, sort of lay the foundation for subsequent policies to achieve those reductions. And I think it's similar here, is we need to think about sort of all the different angles of transportation electrification and then develop policies and tools to execute.
And something, can I add one thing? Something else I wanted to add, I know there's things in there about working with, Lyft and Uber and Englewood Public Schools, and I just want to highlight that it says work with. There's really no binding of anything to those companies or the schools undergoing the EV action plan or by passing the resolution.
Yeah. If I can just add one more thing, I think another benefit is joining sort of our network of Go EV City communities. And we do host webinars throughout the year on things like school bus electrification, EV ready building codes. We held one a few months ago, just sharing sort of best practices from local governments on transportation electrification, and kind of heard each local government's favorite strategy or program on EVs. And I think that sort of knowledge sharing is a great benefit across different cities and counties in the region.
Member Russell.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And so what is the average useful life of an electric vehicle? Say a fleet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a bit of a tough question to answer since they're pretty new, right? I mean, the Nissan Leaf came out in 2012, and I usually describe it as like the iPhone 1 of EVs. It had 75 miles of range. If you bought a Nissan Leaf today, it'd have 250 miles of range. So it's just a far superior technology. I have seen examples of EVs being driven on Uber and Lyft services, and they say they're far surpassing 500,000 miles. even some Teslas getting up to 1 million miles before needing a battery replacement. So they are pretty durable. Maintenance costs tend to be about 50% those of a gas-powered vehicle, especially because you don't need to replace the brake pads. There are no oil changes. There's about 20 moving parts in an EV, 20 parts total compared to thousands in a gas car. So they're described by many as a superior technology, and it does appear that they're durable over time. Like I said, the majority of EVs on our roads today are, were sold in the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, what happens, like what's happening in California right now? They're having a power grid failure, and they have suggested that people increase their air conditioner and don't charge their electric cars. So then what happens when that happens?
Yeah, well, first I'd say it's not a huge issue to unplug your car between 4 and 9 p.m. Most people only drive 30 miles a day. That's the sort of average daily VMT in Colorado. You can get that much charge in a few hours. Overnight you can get 100, 150 miles of charge. And if you're gonna have a level 2 charger, you can get 200 or 300 miles in 8 hours. So I avoid the hours of 4 to 9 anyway, because I'm on a time of use pricing schedule with Excel, and electricity is more expensive in those hours. So I've shifted all of my charging behavior into the nighttime to take advantage of the lower rates, which I think is where everything is. And that's really where we get the massive grid benefits and efficiencies that put downward pressure on rates for everyone, since we're spreading more sort of generation capacity over more hours and shaving the peak demand there. So I think there's potential for EVs to actually improve grid efficiency. And I don't think you need to charge during peak periods for the most part. I would also say we're seeing like new technologies now, like bidirectional charging, where you can actually use the battery as a grid asset and deploy charge back into the grid and supply power to things like homes and businesses when there are the potential for a grid blackout. So if you imagine there's there are 1 million EVs in California right now. If they had access to bidirectional charging, they would be able to use the battery as a power source. And so I think things are moving in that direction over time with a lot of investment from things like the IRA and the private sector.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from council? So, Ms. England, I guess I have one question. We're not binding ourselves to anything tonight. It sounds like this is just going to be the first step to come up with a plan over the next 18 months. We're going to be working with Excel and just come together with a plan itself. Who's going to be part of the committee that actually starts identifying what that action plan may be?
Yeah, so it's not binding at all, again, because the Partners in Energy program is completely free, so our EV action plan is completely free. We're still getting together the official kind of committee of planning for the EV action plan, but we have myself, we have Dave Lewis, who is the code enforcement, but also the chair for the DEI committee. We also have integrated, I always forget this, IFCS, Integrated Family Community Services, because we really want to make sure that the low-income population is represented. We have city planners. We actually have a car broker who works at a small business in Englewood who has a lot of experience in the electric car market, so can kind of help us kind of put ourselves in check if we say anything that's not accurate. And then we also have the executive director of Drive Clean Colorado, who is going to be on the planning group as well.
Thank you, Ms. England. Member Noonekamp, you have another question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Can you help me just understand, maybe I'm getting lost in the jargon, our EV action plan as a city versus this resolution, they're two separate things. How are they, or this plan, is the plan that we're committing to in this resolution the one that we're already doing, or would it be something new, or is this resolution going beyond what we've already committed to do in the plan that we have? Do you understand the question?
Yes, no, absolutely. And it gets a little confusing because we're already doing the EV action plan, and this resolution is basically saying that the city will do an EV action plan, which makes it a little bit easier because we're already doing that. But this just lays out kind of the goals that the residents said that they wanted to see either identified or have done in the EV action plan. And then when the EV action plan is complete, it's still up to city council to adopt the plan.
Are there additional goals in this resolution that were not currently included in our EV action plan?
Not from the outset, not that any of the sustainability members or anyone else identified. And additional things will probably pop up kind of in the conversation with the planning workshops. And there's going to be 3 total of them.
Great. And then my last question was just what kind of, you mentioned in the materials that there was feedback and edits from the Sustainability Commission. Can you chat about that conversation? What kind of edits and kind of influence did that commission have and thoughts?
Yeah, so the Sustainability Commission specifically requested that Englewood Public Schools be involved, so they were added for that. I know that we also had interest from a member to add in about, the possibility of including solar with the EV charging station, so that's in there just to investigate and talk with Excel about that. And then another one that I can think of from the top of my head is that someone really emphasized wanting to make sure that any steps that we're taking for the EV action plan really has our low-income residents in mind, and that we're not putting projects and goals proposed in the plan that would negatively affect them.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Member Russell?
Thank you. So has the Sustainability Commission considered the fact that we don't have the infrastructure available to move forward with this totally? I know that we have some pretty aggressive goals out there. We happened to be talking about this with our grandson the other day, who is an electrician. His other grandfather is very knowledgeable. He's been doing it. He was saying that once we get to 30% electrical vehicles, the electrical grid will collapse currently as the way it is. Has the Sustainability Commission discussed any of this in the fact, is it sustainable at this point?
Yeah, I could touch on that in the beginning, then Matt might want to jump in. So the one thing with the EV action plan is that there isn't a deadline for when all this has to be completed. And so I think that plays a role in it as well. And something for the grid, I also know that we're increasing energy efficiency, and that really helps with the grid load as well. Matt, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else there.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't heard that 30% threshold. I mean, obviously we could look to other states that are well ahead of us and other countries, frankly. I mean, the country of Norway has been near 100% EV adoption for the last 3 or 4 years. I think also good to point out that, right, we have about 5.5 million cars in Colorado, and we replace about 6% of them every year. And right now, 10% of that 6% are electric. And so it isn't going to happen overnight. Like, the fleet turnover will take decades. And so we do have time to make the necessary investments in our electricity system, in the power generation and the substations if need be, and to deploy the right programs, the right price signals, again, to like shift charging to off-peak times to maximize the use of our current resources to save all of us ratepayers money. But Excel is all in on electric vehicles. This is like their first opportunity to grow their market share in decades, right? To take market share from oil companies. And they are thinking through the mechanics of how to support a grid with more electric vehicles on it. And what I've heard from them is, really no concerns about getting the high levels of EV penetration because fleet turnover does take quite a bit of time. I don't think we'll get to 100% EVs until, 2050.
Even Elon Musk said we should not all go to electrical vehicles right now. And he has a lot to gain if everybody did.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I move to approve agenda item 11C1.
Thank you, Member Wink. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Member Russell.
Thank you. I will not be supporting this tonight because I am concerned that we're only looking at the positive side and not looking at the sustainable side. So I'm not in favor of this right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. I'll chime in. I will be supporting this resolution tonight. I do drive an EV. I am wishing that we moved faster. I've had plenty of conversations with Manager Lewis about this. I've had a couple of council requests that have been answered as well. Obviously, this is the direction that we're moving with car companies. I think several of them, I think Ford may have been one of them that said that they're going to stop producing internal combustion engines and move all electric by 2035, I believe. So I know we're moving in that direction. I want to see us move forward with an EV action plan and obviously keep the goals smart and want to make sure that we don't overpromise what we can't deliver, especially being a smaller city, as Member Noonan mentioned earlier. But I do want to see us move in that direction. For that reason, I will be supporting the resolution. So, Member Anderson and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the joy of seeing the Sustainability Commission work on this resolution, and a lot of work has gone into it. I'm super thankful for it. There are a lot of things in here that I'm really excited about. I think the bullet point assess the current EV charging infrastructure within city boundaries. I think that's definitely something we've got to do coming up. But that being said, and with my appreciation to the Sustainability Commission, I'm not going to be supporting this tonight either, because there are several of the goals that we would be committing ourselves to that I think are potentially overextending ourselves. And I really think what Mr. Farmer said regarding the market share and how the market's going to take care of this. Once the grid is there and once the technology is there, electric vehicles will take over the world. I mean, there's no stopping it. And until it's there, we can't really accelerate that process all that much. And so I think sinking lots of energy into, working with transit agencies and outreach, trying to really work to get our city to 100%. I think that's efforts that could be spent on sustainability initiatives that are maybe a little more within reach. So I would like to, I think the real bang for our buck are e-bikes and a walkable city, the kind of community where you can survive without a car, electric or otherwise. And I really want to work on those. So this goes just a little bit too far for me. I'm sure there will be things in the EV action plan I will be totally supportive, but I think this particular resolution is just a little too aggressive. So, but that being said, the Sustainability Commission is a blast. I loved seeing them work on this. I don't want to influence their decisions, and I'm really thankful to see this come forward and the work that went on it. But I can't support it tonight.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have some thoughts similar to Councilmember Anderson's. I think this does go a little bit far. We have a lot of, for instance, classic car enthusiasts in Inglewood, and I don't think that my 66 Mustang would run very well as an electric car. I might be deluding myself on that, but I'd like to keep it in its original condition. So the 100% goal at any time, I think is a little too ambitious for my taste. There's also some language in the resolution itself that makes me a little uncomfortable. The one clause that I saw is, whereas the current prices for gasoline show the instability of relying on namely fossil fuels for our transportation needs, with high prices most severely impacting our low income and fixed income residents. I'm not entirely certain that's necessary, and I'm just a little uncomfortable with the language there. Fossil fuels have a place, they still do, and it just doesn't resonate with me, and I'm not sure it belongs here. The next page in the resolution, section 1, there are a couple of items where if we go forward with this, I would like to see them changed. I suspect that this is part of the Go EV commitment, but it occurs to me that working with transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft is a little bit too ambitious for a city like Inglewood. We have limited resources. Those are region-wide organizations. I'm not particularly interested in engaging them on that or expending city resources to engage them on that. It seems like more of a state function to me. The other is regarding the representative to the EV Action Plan Strategic Committee. it calls for the chair of the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And frankly, I would be more comfortable with that language if it said a member of the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. It's been my experience that when we call for a specific member to perform a function, we don't provide the type of flexibility that group needs. So if this were to go forward, I would propose those amendments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. I hear and obviously value the opinion of my council members who've spoken against this or spoken with some trepidation in moving forward here. And I want to ask that you maybe think of it a bit differently. Sorry, my allergies are really, I need a good blow, but I can't. So what I heard and what I've seen this evening seems like a clear opportunity for the city of Englewood to connect, to be connected, to remain connected with other agencies who are doing this work. We get to share best practices with cities and other entities in our region. We can coordinate resources, and the value, I think, and benefits go beyond that, and I see them all aligning in terms of our sharing and growing from the collaboration with our neighboring Colorado cities and towns and villages, etc. It makes me think of the work we're doing in Dr. Cog and the connectivity we have in terms of transportation and all of the solutions we've found and the strength we've found in working together as communities across the region. This doesn't seem any different from that in terms of how we'll benefit ourselves as Little Englewood. Mayor Pro Tem, you mentioned some funding and that we're a little out of league with some of this. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I do see it differently. I think it's an opportunity to keep up, progress at a natural pace that's supported all around us. I think it's partnership, right? It's continued partnership. A lot of what I've seen on this council in the last 6 years is us maybe playing a little bit of catch up with regard to updating policy, updating a lot of how we interact with our surrounding. And I think that we should keep our eye on that prize of being a modern entity, being the city that we've shown we are, embracing the new while absolutely embracing who we have been in our history, and not ducking out of opportunities to be good partners to our neighbors. So I think our Sustainability Commission has done a really tremendous job in their research and preparation for what they've prepared or shared with us tonight. I think we'd be really missing out if we took a smaller view on what we have before us tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Wink. Member Woodward.
Yes, I'd have to agree with Member Wink. I think this is an opportunity for us to really kind of start moving forward on EVs. I think I've noticed throughout the city more and more residences with solar. And in considering, a solar vehicle for myself, I would be thinking adding to the solar I already have. And it's pretty darn effective, since I've literally had the only part of an electric bill for a year now has been my use of their station or whatever. But as far as electricity, it's been zero. And that goes through these hard times like 90-degree days and that sort of thing, in cold winters. So I'm for this. I think what we are putting up is is hardly anything relative to the payback that we could be getting. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Nunnenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank staff for all the hard work on this. I know this has been a big process, and I'm excited to see the city moving forward on this conversation. I'm excited to see the work of the Sustainability Commission. I think that the work that obviously we were just accepted into the Excel Energy Partners Energy Program for our EV Action Plan, and I'm really excited about how do we increase awareness and the infrastructure that we need for our citizens who are using electric vehicles, and looking at the city's fleet. What are the things we can be doing to prepare for the future, and how do we think in the long term? What was hard for me this evening in this presentation is I don't see the value proposition for the city to engage in this resolution, because I think we would be, as noted earlier, committing to spending a lot of time creating a plan that we may not implement because it may not be what's the most effective for what Inglewood needs. And being on the city council, I've said over and over again that not every answer is going to be the answer to Inglewood's problem. And I don't want to try to say, well, this is what everyone else is doing, so we're going to do it too, if it might not be the best approach for Inglewood. And I think that if we can move forward with our EV action plan that's tailored and specific and includes our Sustainability Commission and includes our citizens, and we're getting all of that input, I would rather put our time and our energy there than over here to work on a plan that we committed to doing because we passed this resolution, even if there are maybe pieces of it that don't actually meet our needs. So for that, I just couldn't get there tonight. I really appreciate the work. I'm excited about the policy, and I'm excited for us to move forward with our EV action plan.
Anyone else? City Manager Lewis?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just mention that, Inglewood, I think, has had a propensity for many years to go it alone. And the one thing that I think didn't really come out clearly in this presentation is how this does give us access to resources and information. And as Member Wink said, best practices. I just want to point out that I think that would definitely be a benefit since we're already doing, much of the work. And the last thing I would say is, are there things that we could strike from the resolution and still get it approved? Because it sounded like we had a few people that were not voting on this because there were some things in it that you didn't like. Could we possibly strike some of those and still pass the resolution?
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. I heard two suggestions tonight in terms of what could get struck from the resolution. As Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, that Uber, Lyft, they're going to make the decision that's best for them. So I know they're moving towards EVs, but having that as part of the resolution kind of gets in the way of what their business decisions are. The other one was the specific chair. I'd be fine with making those changes, but I'm not sure if there's anything else from other members of council that they would like to see struck from this. Member Wink, since I see you move in that direction.
Thank you, Mayor. I would be in support of making those changes as well, Mayor. So I'm behind you.
Anyone else? Member Nunnenkamp?
Yeah, maybe this is a question for the city manager more than striking or making changes to the resolution. But when I asked what the value proposition was for the city tonight, it was access to some webinars, which could be interesting, but I'm thinking about our staff time and, the access that we have through the Excel program seems more compelling to me. If that's a misunderstanding for council, I'd be happy to have a conversation with staff and get more education about this. But from what was shared tonight, I didn't see that, and I will also say I want us to be working with our partners. I think that's incredibly important in working with our regional partners. There are not that many near us in the list that we have so far, and I think that working with the Excel program and moving forward in that way makes more sense than this. Again, I don't see how this connects us to our partners in a meaningful way beyond we pass the resolution. If I'm missing something, please let me know, but that hasn't been presented to me tonight.
Anyone else? So then I'll ask the question. Actually, I'll make the motion to amend the two items that Mayor Pro Tem stated earlier tonight, which were to remove, as a bullet, the work and encourage taxis and TNCs, Uber, that bullet, as well as remove, or just Yeah, change the city's chair to a member of the city's DEI committee. Make those two changes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? If not, can we vote on that amendment?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes, 1 nay being Member Russell.
Thank you. Any further amendments? Seeing none, can we get a motion, or can we get a vote on the motion on the table?
Member Anderson?
Nay.
Member Noonenkamp?
Nay.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Nay.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 3 ayes, 4 nays. The nays being Member Anderson, Member Noonenkamp, Member Russell, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. Does not pass.
Thank you, City Clerk, and thank you for the presentation tonight, Mr. Fromer, and thank you very much as well, Ms. England. Moving on to 9C2, where staff recommends City Council approve by motion the electrical instrumentation and control improvements at water system facilities. Of tonight is Mr. John McCarl with the South Platte Renew Partners.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council. City Council consider.
Can you verify that mic is on?
Should be a green light.
How about now? Very good. Sorry about that. Today we are here to request that City Council consider approval of a package of electrical instrumentation control contracts. My name is John McCarl. I am with the City of Englewood Utilities Department, engineer on their staff. And we will continue on. One second. Here we go. All right. So in electrical instrumentation and control, or EI&C, is crucial for the operation of the city's water treatment facilities, including the Allen Water Treatment Plant, as well as the remote pumping stations. In order to implement this package, or to implement this work, it requires 3 distinct fields, which is why we packaged these 7 contracts together and presenting it today. Those distinct fields are the electricians, the integrators, and the programmers. City staff, together with these contractors, will work to make improvements to the emergency backup power. We will build a backbone of infrastructure for modernizing and optimizing our processes, as well as focusing our efforts on reducing risk and eliminating single points of failure. Over the next few slides, I'm going to go through each of the distinct fields and kind of explain. Electricians provide power to the equipment, and then they're going to run the wire and conduit to said equipment. In December of 2021, the city released a RFP for electrical services. We entered into a contract with 3 of the contractors for $90,000, and today we are recommending an amendment to these contracts from $90,000 to $500,000. Integrators provide equipment such as chemical pumps or flow meters, and they can do the procurement, the installation, the calibration and configuration of said equipment. An SOQ was released in April of 2022, and 3 contractors were selected in order to enter into a contract, and we're recommending a contract amount of $250,000. And the last piece of the puzzle is the programming. So the programmer is going to write the code to make the interface that the operator interacts with to then control or monitor said equipment. We're recommending an optimal source with Golden Automation. Golden Automation has assisted the city in developing the instrumentation control standards, has worked with South Platte Renew since 2008, and is the IT department of the city is supportive of Golden Automation to provide consistency across the city's SCADA networks. Funding for the project is in accordance with the master plan, so we're going to focus on the backbone of electrical instrumentation and control at the plant. Funding is in the 2022 approved budget as well as the 2023 proposed budget. That concludes my presentation. Now open it up to any questions that are.
Thank you, Mr. McCarl. Any questions from council?
Can you just remind me what the acronym SCADA means?
Yes. Supervisory, data acquisition and control. Supervisory, control, and data acquisition. There we go. Little dyslexic moment.
Member Russell?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. The one thing that I kind of wondered about, we have $3 million scheduled for the budget year this year. We're in September already. And so we're probably not going to spend that. We're only, what, 850,000 spent out of that? Are we going to be able to expend that 3 million by the end of the year?
I cannot comment on how much we have spent so far. I would have to get back to you, but it is definitely a ramp-up process. The staff is, we know that we have access to these funds. We are putting in the pieces of the puzzle in order to add value in the best way possible and execute on these projects. At this point, it would be a stretch to make it. It is a lofty goal, but we are putting in these types of contracts, give us the base in order to execute on that in the future.
Then I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but whatever we don't spend, can we spend that in 2023?
Pardon me, Josh, are you familiar with the finance there?
Good evening. My name is Josh Roach. I'm the interim Deputy Director of Operations and Maintenance. We'll get back to you to be 100% certain, but I would assume that we can roll that over for the next year in the budget, just put it in the budget as proposed, proposed to be in the budget, and roll it over for the next year if we don't spend the entire funds this year.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I had a constituent ask me, even if we replace all of the electrical and the IT department, we still have a lot of pipes in the ground that need to be replaced. Are we going to be addressing that?
You want to speak here for your project?
Yes. So this is only a portion of the budget for the water and the sewer fund. So right now, or a few months ago, water main replacement construction was approved by City Council. So this year we have $1.2 million going towards water main replacement throughout the city, and this is an annual program. So this is the first year that we are kicking it off, but the intent is to do this every single year and make our way through the entire city to replace those pipes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any further questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
I move to approve 11C2.
Thank you, Member Nunekamp. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Nunekamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Mr. McCarl, thank you very much for the presentation and for filling in for Director Van Rye on short notice. Thank you. We are now moving on to general discussion, Mayor's choice. I think there was just a couple things. I wanted to thank everyone involved in the Inglewood Block Party. It was what I can tell, a huge success. Very lively, very engaged public. Just really impressed with the amount of work that went into that and just the turnout from our citizens. Heard a lot of great things and was happy to be a part of it. So thank you very much to everyone that was involved in that. And then this past Saturday, I was in town and was able to see movie at the park here at Bates Logan Park. Same thing there. Director Underhill and her staff have done an amazing job with that. A lot of families out for that event. We had great weather, a lot of bugs, so I got stung quite a bit by the mosquitoes that night. But it was still a great time, and I just really love. One of the things that came out of our neighborhood night out was I heard from a lot of citizens that they really value the events that we're putting on for the community, and this was one of those, and obviously just really thankful for that, how that turned out and just the turnout for that as well. So no other comments from me tonight. Council members' choice, anyone have anything for us tonight? Member Newnham?
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to share with the council that the mayor, city manager Lewis, and I met with Swedish and Craig over the last week as part of the hospital liaison committee that we serve on. And they were great conversations. They happened separately. We updated them on the potential work on Old Hampton for the Complete Streets project and how that might impact them, the EDDA, upcoming ballot initiatives, and the Tri-City homelessness work, and received input from them on all of those topics. And then they also shared with us some of their plans. Obviously, we know Swedish has been experiencing a lot of construction and a lot of growth over the last several months. Craig is set to begin theirs soon, and so that will continue to obviously have an impact on the neighborhood and on the city, and so we're working closely with them. One flag I do want this city or this council to be aware of, and that we flagged for staff as well, is as that area continues to change and as the construction continues to happen, we do expect to see an increase of traffic on Girard, as Swedish is using that entrance more and more, and so we will need to continue to keep that in mind for our own planning, and I appreciated them letting us know, because that will obviously have a lot of impacts for how we move forward and how we collaborate with those important city partners. Also wanted to note, was also at the block party, really fantastic effort by staff and by our business community. It was such a full, energetic event. I was so encouraged to see so many people participating and really thrilled. Also, thank you to my colleagues who participated in the city council booth. I know we've never done that before, and I may have wrangled many of you into more work than you bargained for, but I think it was a huge success, and it was a wonderful opportunity to engage with the citizens. And then, as a note of awareness for this group, I will not be at next week's city council meeting. Unfortunately, I need to be out of town for work, and I will see you the week after.
Thank you, Member Newnham. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'd like to echo everything that was said about the block party. I think it was very successful this year, and I was glad to be able to participate at the council booth. I did want to bring up one thing for our future consideration, and we don't necessarily need to discuss this tonight, but the block party occurs roughly 3 months before the election. And in an even year like this year, that is not an issue. But next year, it'll be an odd year, and I believe there's 4 seats that will be up for re-election. It is a little bit concerning to me from an ethical standpoint that members who might be up for re-election would potentially be participating in a city-funded booth 3 months before the election. So I think we need to consider potentially passing a policy or coming to agreement on who can or cannot participate in that council booth in odd years. I have no concerns with even years. I think it's a great public outreach effort, but I don't want it to get mixed up with a campaign event or misconstrued as a campaign event, and that is concerning to me, particularly considering the fact that we are using public resources to erect this council booth.
Great point, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Wink.
Thanks for mentioning that, Mayor Pro Tem. It certainly came to mind as well. I would actually prefer to do away with the booth altogether, and I think it leaving it as an option for X years and not other years just raises too much contention. So I would be in favor of just getting rid of it altogether. I mean, we've the last several years just operated as happy city council members roaming around the block party. My opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Wink. Anyone else for council member's choice? Member Anderson.
Block party was great. I won't add anything else to what others have already said. But also this Saturday's neighborhood rehab project, and we still have a few more volunteer slots open, so we'd love it if anyone would want to come join us this weekend. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Woodward.
I want to echo what other members have said about the block party. With regards to the booth, I think we have choices there. We could not have it on odd years. Or another thing, I think if we had it at the event that we had over at the police department in Miller Field, in the springtime, that is where I heard the complaint that is, where is city council? Where's their booth? And that's what gave me the idea that we ought to have it at the block party, so we could do something like that at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Anyone else? Mayor Pro Tem, just so you know, I did put it down as an item to speak about in the future, if we don't decide to talk about it tonight, so. Member Russell, did you have something? Saw you reach over.
I was just gonna say, echo the other council members, the block party was a great, party this year, and I do agree with Councilmember Wink. I did not sign up to help, with the block, party, the council booth. I believe it does create more work for city staff to set up a booth for us when they've got plenty of work to do anyway. And so I agree that we could do away with it altogether. I do totally agree with what Mayor Pro Tem shared, about especially election years, but I think probably there are other things that council members are involved in too in an election year that are conflicts of interest, and they may not even realize it. So I think that's something that we all ought to be more cognizant of. I actually, the one thing that I had asked for, there's a couple things that I would like, and this is a council request. I would like council to get a copy of all of the exit interviews, because I think as we're planning for the budget, I think we need that information. I also think that it might be a good idea to get the 10-year budgets and the 10-year census of the Public Works Department, where we are now, how many employees we had 10 years ago, how many employees we have now, so we can compare, and also who we're contracting out to, because I think we're contracting out a lot of work in that department. So I would like to look at that. Let's see. Then just one other thing, I would like a council request to get a copy of the junction for the past 2 years. I think it comes out monthly. I think that would be a good thing for council to see.
Anything else, Member Russell?
That is it. Thank you very much.
Anything else from council? Seeing none, moving on to City Manager's choice.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything to report on, but I will mention that I can't release the exit interviews that would violate the charter, and I won't do that. But we are glad to provide vacancies over the last 10 years there. We have done a number of council requests with regard to contracts through Public Works. Can I send those to you first, Member Russell, and then we'll see if there's anything that hasn't been touched on?
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. No other report.
Perfect. With
I have a question related.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Manager Lewis, can you elaborate on the charter violation? Are you alleging that Charter 32 would prohibit it, or is there another chapter of the charter that?
I just pulled up Charter 32 right when the city manager was speaking. It states that council shall deal with the administrative service solely and directly through the city manager, and neither the council nor its members nor committee shall either dictate the appointment or direct or interfere with the work of any officer or employee under the city manager, either publicly or privately. And then there's an additional sentence, but it's not relevant.
I think I should probably go on record here and say that my interpretation of Charter 32 would not prohibit that information from being provided to us, particularly if it was anonymized. But if the attorney disagrees with that, I'm willing to defer.
And go ahead, City Attorney.
I was just going to add, let me think about it and let me read through the rest of the charter and code, and then the city manager and I can discuss further.
Thank you. Member Anderson?
I had the same reaction. I'm not sure Charter 32 would prohibit it, but I also don't know if I think it's a great idea, just in that these are, you know, the confidentiality and from these employees, and once something is sent to city council, maybe it could be done in some kind of confidential way, but I don't really want that information becoming public, so I'm hesitant about the idea altogether.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Russell?
And I was in no way wanting it tied to any individual. I wanted it to be more generic and just kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, so it wouldn't necessarily be able to be tied to anyone. Thank you.
Mayor, if I can.
Go ahead, City Manager Lewis.
Apologies, Member Russell. I did think you were asking for the individual, and that we have not even shared those outside the person's director and the HR and city manager's office. So, but we are glad to provide the aggregate information. I think that is useful, and we're glad to do that.
Anything else, City Manager Lewis? With that, this meeting is now adjourned. Everyone, will see you next Monday. Have a good evening.